Test, test. Can you hear me? If you are watching, let me know in the chat. Let me know how your week has been going in the chat, and we're going to get started with the topic in a moment. Yes, Arvind, it is the second live. I've just put a poll in the chat if you have a look. So that would be good if you want to respond to that. So thanks for that. I'll just wait a moment or two. We've got 7 people so far, from what I can see. That's good. Yeah, it's my second live. I did want to go live a bit more often. I'm trying to go live every Friday. So if you check the live page of my YouTube channel, you'll see that I have another 5 or so lives planned for the rest of the next few weeks. So every Friday time, you'll see me go live. That'll be good. I just want to add one more thing to the live chat. Give me a second. Arvin, did you get that job? I know you were interviewing. I know you mentioned you were interviewing for a job, right? Did you manage to get that job? There we go. I've got everything set up now. Oh, you got the job. Was it a big tech company? You don't have to share anything if you don't want to let us know all the details, but it would be good to know. Austin, Texas, right? That's good. Okay, Amazon. Hopefully it pays well. I did a recent video actually about Amazon. And I don't know if you saw it. It was this older guy, this bald guy. I put a Target logo on his head, quite funny. But yeah, Amazon's quite good. Definitely get that on your resume. And then what you want to do is essentially make sure that you can leverage that to your next opportunity, wherever that would be, right? So it's definitely good. From that video I made, it's kind of a very competitive environment, of course, and lots of backstabbing and office politics and things. But it's just such a massive thing to have that on your resume. It'll carry you through your resume for the next couple years after leaving. I would say if you go from Amazon, say, to a small company to a bigger one, that's easy to do. I see. Let me put your little thing on the thing. So Arvin's got the job at Amazon. That's great news. Hopefully it pays well. Hopefully you get that experience you want, and then of course you can switch to whatever you want. What I would say is, and it's hard to plan sometimes throughout the course of your career, but when you're in the early stages of your career, what you want to be able to do is, of course, get that experience, but then over time, essentially be able to pivot to a lifestyle that works better for you, right? So, for example, say you go from Amazon, you get the experience, and then you're like, okay, well, I can go to another big name company, which you're free to do, like let's say Google, and level up on your salary. But maybe you think, okay, for lifestyle purposes, you're thinking of having a family, having more autonomy of your life. You might go to a smaller company that gives you more flexibility to work from home. So it's about playing that long game, because over time, the career is obviously a priority, and that's the purpose of the channel. But also, lifestyle is a big thing, right? So you need to think about that over time. So that's good. You've got that now. You said you spoke too much, maybe in the interview or in the chat. But yeah, I mean, look, it worked out at the end. Sometimes it's easy for us to be judging ourselves and be very self-conscious in these interviews. Shout out to Z Team Video. I think I've seen your comments on my channel before. The profile photo looks familiar. So good morning to you too. It's afternoon right now in the UK, in London. So it's great to have a global audience, particularly in America. You know, I do like my American audience. You probably can tell from my videos or some of my views, political views and things. I do like America. Great place. So, Arvind, let us know actually, because you know it was so funny. I was getting a haircut today, and the guy next to me was getting a haircut, and he had an American accent, and he moved from Austin, Texas, a um, to Amsterdam to work for a bit, worked in some kind of sales software role, and I didn't ask him because I didn't know the guy, but I would say Austin, Texas is very liberal and it's kind of nice to be in. I know Joe Rogan moved there, right? Um, and other parts of Texas are more east and conservative and things like that. So it's interesting to know what Austin is like when you're actually there. Yeah, that'd be good to know. And then what have we got here? We've got Arvin saying, it's field engineer, so lots of travel, but I'll use it to switch to design. I know it's treacherous, but I'm prepared to hop into a better robotic-specific company, start something with people. Yeah, that's good. As long as you have a long-term plan. One thing I realized throughout my career is that as much as I try to plan like 3 years ahead, 5 years ahead, things pivot so quickly. Not only is the world moving faster than it ever did before, industries change, your opportunities that are available to you change. Like, for example, I was working around financial risk management in foreign exchange, currencies, commodities, things like that. I wanted to switch to focusing on interest rate products. And then, you know, things change so quickly in your career. You might end up going for a senior management role before you know it. You might end up going into, you know, a new area like fintech or crypto before you know it, because that's where the opportunities are. And what you're looking for, the market slowed down, right? So you really got to be ready to pivot. And it looks like at least you've got some decent experience, big name company on your resume that will help you in the future. So Z Team Video is saying, thank you, Ethan. Thanks to you too. I hope the weather is good out there. It's interesting because it is quite bright right now with the sun's out, but it's not necessarily the warmest. But yeah, it's kind of up and down with the weather. It's autumn weather, right? Hoodie season, if you're familiar with the hoodie season. So hoodie season, I don't know if you've seen it. It's a meme sometimes. Used to be in like the hip hop blogs and things like that. Hoodie season is like that autumn season where you're wearing a hoodie and it's kind of cold, kind of warm, but not too cold or too hot. I've never been to Texas. Hopefully, Austin's a decent place. I keep making the meme that I'll hop on the Joe Rogan when I move. And also, yes, prepared to pivot. I know the job market's dynamic. Yeah, Austin. I mean, Austin. What I know from Austin, because I don't know if you've watched those funny videos on YouTube whereby there's people who make fun of. Let me put this in the chat. That make fun of Joe Rogan and Brendan Schwab. I think it's called Too Lazy to Try, and there's another one called Podcast Cringe. The reason why, hopefully that goes, yeah. So there's two YouTube channels that make fun of like Joe Rogan and his comedy crowd, and one thing they mentioned actually was Joe Rogan has a specific comedy club that he goes to. I think it's called the Mothership in Austin, Texas. Don't quote me on that. But what you should do is go to there and just meet the people there, because I assume the people there might not be like liberal type of people. You know, they might be cooler people. Comedy place in Austin, Texas. Yeah, so I don't know. I'm not an expert on Austin, Texas, but I think I've heard that. But you know, there is the based guy, you know, based in Texas, you know, infowolf.com. You know, I don't know if I can say that on the platform, but you know, Alex Jones and them, Owen Stroy, I shout out to them, man. So, you know, Texas is a good place. You know, shout out to Texas. Hopefully go to the shooting range, support the Second Amendment, of course. It's warm in Chicago, but I'm heading into hoodie season as usual. That's good. I heard Austin was a decent city. Okay, that's good. Yeah, that's good. Chicago, hopefully in a safe part of Chicago, because all we hear about Chicago in London is really, Chirac, Chief Keef, the South Side. Uh, um, Fuentes, if you're familiar with Fuentes, I won't say his first name, but he is in he's in Chicago, Berwyn or something, based on what they said on some of those police reports. But Chicago's an interesting place, so that's good you're out there having fun. Let's get on with this, right? So we've got a few people here. We've got 10 people. Had a little bit of an intro. So, ranked the fastest growing jobs 2024 to 2034, right? So what I want to talk through here, where are the jobs actually growing? Because we hear all this negative media, oh, the jobs are disappearing, we can't find any jobs. Let's just get one more comment from Sam. Great to see you going live, Ethan. Been a fan for almost as long as you've been on YouTube. Great content. Help me decide to go into engineering for more career versatility. I love Too Lazy to Try. Yeah, I used to watch Joe Rogan going up. He's corny now, and apparently he's a Fed. Yeah, everybody's a Fed, isn't it? Every podcaster, every influencer's a Fed. That's the accusation. I see Candace Owens. Everyone's pointing fingers at each other. It's a Spider-Man meme, right? There's a joke online because I keep up with the right-wing space online on YouTube and Twitter and things like that. And everyone's like, that guy's a Fed. Tucker Carlson's a Fed. Candace Owens a Fed. Everyone's a Fed. But okay, that's funny. And I keep up with that scene. It's quite funny, and like people who make YouTube channels making fun of these guys. But let's go into this. Fastest growing jobs, right? Everyone talks about how the job market sucks, but what actually is going on, right? So we've got some decent analysis here presented in an interesting way. So we're going to go through some of the fastest growing jobs. I'm going to switch tabs actually, so it looks a bit better for you. Show this tab instead. Yeah, so you can see this. So it talks about the fastest growing jobs right now. Now, some of the fastest growing jobs are in renewables, right? So whether it's the agenda, the ESG agenda, or it's just the environment and the demands for electricity, where are the jobs actually growing? And I've seen this from multiple sources. Wind turbine techs, so setting up wind turbines, doing type of physical manual labor, solar panel installers, those are other good skills to have. Lots of people just want to think about, going into tech because they hear about a six-figure salary, so finance to a certain extent. But it's worthwhile paying attention to not only what is trending right now, but what your personality is based in, right? So, for example, you might not really be the technical type of person, but you have an interest in physical labor. If you're going to work in physical labor, don't just go for the low handyman job, become a plumber or an electrician, even though some of those can pay well. Think about where is the niche that is actually growing, right? And in this case, we've got wind turbine, we've got solar panel installers. These are fast growing jobs. And then there's other things to look out for, right? So healthcare is a big thing here. That is a growing job. Nurse practitioners, healthcare managers, physical therapist assistants, physician assistants, right? Now, what is the theme there, right? The theme there is lots of jobs are growing also within the healthcare niche. Why is that happening? Because you have an aging population, right? They say in certain states in America and across the Western world, because people aren't having babies, essentially you have a low birth rate, an aging population. 25% of US adults are over 65 years old in many states, right? We also know about in countries like Japan, they have an aging population because they're not having kids. Same thing in the UK, across Europe. Really across the world, you see that general trend. But the only thing that's keeping the average age lower is because they're taking in so many migrants. So people from the West and other countries, to be fair, are not necessarily reproducing, but there's a migrant influx, which is kind of keeping giving the impression that there's a lot of people in the workforce. But really, the core population of that society is aging out. And also, you have all these weird trends. Like I say, it's so expensive for people to have kids these days, and it's a broken social dynamic. So what you're going to see, rather than complain about that all the time, is look for the opportunities. Like I say, nurse practitioner, healthcare manager, physical therapy assistant, physician assistant, all this type of thing is healthcare work. Now, if you're at the early stage of your career or you're thinking about pivoting over time, I will come back to the comments soon, but let me just explain this. So over time, you're going to see, okay, well, where are the opportunities? And I mentioned someone on my channel a few times many months ago was a successful trader who worked at Bear Stearns. and he runs his own YouTube channel now. I think he doesn't sell any scam type of products about, I'll teach you how to trade, things like that, but he just gives general free advice and has like a subscription newsletter. His name's Gregory Manorino. Some of you might remember his name. And he absolutely blew up over the lockdown period, right? He doubled his subscribers, massively grew. There was daily trading updates at market open and market close. And I looked into his story a bit. And before he worked in trading at Bear Stearns, he worked in the healthcare industry, and he did relatively well in the healthcare industry. Then he worked in the finance field, and then he's decided to kind of go into financial journalism. And, because he was saying things that were kind of debunking the financial system. They kind of marginalized him a bit, right? He was one of those talking heads on like a CNBC type of channel, and they weren't so keen with some of the things he was saying, so he kind of got pushed out of that. But the point is, you should look at mastering fields throughout your career, because over the long term, you might want to stay in tech for the whole of your career, but the opportunities might not be there. So if you have an interest in tech and you have a secondary interest, let's just say in energy efficiency, you might be doing some things on the weekend. Maybe your friends in the solar panel industry. I know solar panel sales is quite popular as a kind of job to have for some people in America. You should just look into those type of things. And also, like I said, massive growing area is the healthcare industry. Now, partly is the aging population, but another thing to look out for is you see a lot of guys these days who are more health conscious, right? They want to be healthy. Some people are looking into TRT, testosterone replacement therapy. Other people are interested in just anti-aging type of good health practices. Many people are doing blood work, where they're getting their blood tested to see what they have deficiencies in minerals and things like that. And there's lots of popularity I see in London in particular, a lot of these health clinics where it's not necessarily a health clinic where people have a negative health issue, but they want to, like I say, basically look for any type of healthcare available to test for any issues they might have to improve their health, right? And I'm sure you've seen, in the Joe Rogan niche, for example, lots of people focus on testosterone and things like that. There's also a lot of women who are focused on anti-aging, right? Botox clinics, those are going all over London, all the time. I see, every kind of high street area, any type of shopping mall area, there's at least a couple stores that are essentially, healthcare clinics for anti-aging for women, right? And that's going to become more and more common over time. So I'd look into that, right, as a potential niche. You might spend a decade in tech or finance and then pivot to the medical industry because that's where the demand is. You have some transferable skills. And it's the same thing with, like I said, the energy industry. And then also you've got analytics, right? Data scientists, cybersecurity analysts, actuaries, which is essentially insurance, where they do all the calculations about, how much they should charge for your insurance, how likely is it you'll be in an accident based on your age, demographic, and things like that. Operation analysts. So what are the kind of trends here when we look at all of these type of growing areas? Energy, healthcare, and analytics, right? So the key thing to look for, and I was looking at these trends in a bit of detail. So one thing would be they essentially firstly look at manual jobs, right? Manual jobs, wind turbines, solar panel installers. That's a good sign that, jobs that can't be done by AI immediately. I know lots of people are going to think about robotics over time. That could perhaps have an impact here. But the key thing is, if you have manual labor jobs that pay well, that is a good area for you to go in because, like I say, it won't immediately be taken by AI. So apart from manual jobs, you have technical jobs, which we mentioned here, the data scientists, cybersecurity, and things like that. So that's another area where there'll still be demand for big data, lots of complex analysis. There'll still be a demand for that. Now, the other thing here is trends, right? The people who are adapting to trends, the growing areas, healthcare, because you have an aging population. And also there's another trend there, which is the environmental trend, right? Whether we want to say it's fake and the establishment's pushing it, or there is a genuine demand. Wind turbine tech, solar panel installers, these are actually interesting jobs to be in and growing areas. So those are the three things to look out for: manual jobs that pay well, technical jobs that require, high level of skills, and then trends, right? Obvious trends would be the environment and aging population, hence healthcare. So those are things to look out for. Let's go through some of the comments. Data scientists and cybersecurity are safe. I would say that those look relatively safe based on this, but I always take any analysis with a grain of salt. Where is the demand? Where you're currently working? Is it a specific niche within that? And these are obviously high-level polls, a high-level analysis rather than in-depth analysis of what the current situation is for you. So it's worthwhile taking that into account. And then let's look at the next comment. Arvin says, it's interesting to think about the larger effect of your job as well. I saw a TikTok yesterday of Jensen Huang talking about electricians and plumbing booming in the future due to AI data centers. Yeah, so that's a good thing, the secondary impact of that, because, you know, I hear a lot of analysis coming out on Twitter, for example, where people are posting how much electricity it requires for a lot of these AI data centers, right? Which is quite funny because a lot of it, there's a talk about AI slop where people are just sending completely dumb, useless requests to AI, and it's requiring all these AI servers to generate, you know, all these anime images, like Studio Ghibli images, all this kind of time-wasting analysis that AI is doing because people are just using it for fun. So, and all of, like you said, those AI data centers do need electricians, do need plumbers. And let me give you another interesting example of this. I know some developing countries that I visited, right? For example, in Latin America and elsewhere, where they have Bitcoin mining because the electricity is cheap. And you have Americans who are like white Americans who would move down there and they manage a data center. They have a massive mining um, mining kind of factory, I guess, however you describe it, mining center for Bitcoin in, you know, the rural part of certain parts of Latin America. And they might be quite wealthy. They keep their wealth quite, you know, low key. They're not telling people, you know, how much money they have in crypto or otherwise. And they're making quite a lot of money because the electricity cost is so low, but they're mining so much Bitcoin, having a lot of profit there from the transaction fees and things like that. So there's all these little hidden opportunities that you don't hear about. And it was interesting because I know someone who's doing that, but I was waiting at the airport one time, right, in a developing country. I won't name it. And he was there was an American there who's having that discussion with his team on Zoom, right? So you never know where the opportunities could be. So think about the secondary effects, and that's what Arvin's saying here. Think about the secondary effects. You can't just be like, okay, well, I have to go into AI because AI is a thing, but obviously there'll be other requirements. You know, it could be electricians that are supporting those data centers, for example. Gave me the vibe of pharaohs using slave labor to build the pyramids. Always understand the impact of your role and build your own equity via investments. Yeah, definitely have investments. You could have stock options for the companies you're working at, like Amazon, for example. And the other thing is around, I've listened to, if you watch my channel, I think about things quite broadly and conspiracies and things like that. And there is like a major conspiracy out there that, like, you know, the way people are being treated, they're pushed into some form of slavery through wage debt slavery, having to work long hours and pay, you know, a lot of money to taxes that don't benefit them, pay for, you know, properties that cost way too much, or paying high fees in rent. So there's all sorts of ways of looking at it. And the interesting theory that I came across recently about on this theory of slave labor or people being treated like slaves at the masses, the theory is that the ultra rich, the elite, however you want to call them, the secret societies, whatever, what they want to do is essentially reduce the population because they have life extension technologies that they haven't introduced yet. And they're putting people, billions of people, through a test. You know, can you avoid all the chemical processed foods? Can you avoid all the lies and decide whether you're going to, you know, let's just say, take a medical procedure that might not be good for you, that there's pressure on you to get? They're playing all these mind games and psyops with you to see who's going to survive, like the Hunger Games or something like that. I haven't watched that show, but it's along that concept where it's like, they're trying to see which one of the slaves are smart enough to see through all the psyops and the lies and survive. And I know that sounds a bit crazy, but how can this system be so wicked and evil as it is, and mistreating employees in the way it is and people? So I do feel a bit like it is the pharaohs and the slaves. It's like the billionaires and everyone else struggling amongst themselves. And that's why, you know, as I say on my channel all the time, there's very little lifestyle difference between many people who are on government benefits and people who are lower income or middle class, right? Middle class are living in a slightly nicer apartment than a person living in government housing. Obviously, there's a bit more nuance to it than that, but there's not a massive difference between a guy who's making, let's just say, 80K a year and a guy who's making 40K a year. They'll probably live a very similar life. The 80K a year guy will probably invest a bit more and maybe have slightly nicer things, right? There's really no middle class, right? It's really just masses of people who are like slaves. Z Team says, find good people, work with them, avoid the Ponzi and pyramid schemers. It won't be easy, but you'll sleep good and only speak in euphemisms and abstractions as necessary. Yeah, I think we all have to speak in code. Even now, I have to speak in code. You have to censor your thoughts and censor the way you speak. Is completely ridiculous. I genuinely think immortality will be bigger than robotics. It might save us as a species. This is very interesting because I think that conspiracy theory I looked into is the main theory, right? Where it's like they're gonna make things difficult for people, but the people who can survive will be able to live longer than ever. The life extension technology will be the big thing. And you already see the super rich, the billionaires. You hear about, a Rothschild who's had like 10 heart transplants, right? And Soros and people like that. And you're like, why have they had so many heart transplants? Kind of crazy, right? Oh, wait, let me just make sure the sound is okay. Yeah. So it's all types of crazy situations like that. And sorry, let me just go back. There we go. Yeah. So it's all types of crazy situations like that. And I think about that a lot. I think about what is the long-term game plan here, because it's just crazy. Z Team says, go into medical engineering and genetic engineering, make the new cyborg race. Yeah, it is worthwhile thinking about what the long-term game is. Like, we all know what job we're in now, or where we'll be maybe for the next 3 years with a bit more AI. Everyone have an AI assistant. I'm going to cover that in the next video, right? In the next video coming up in a minute or two. But it's like worthwhile thinking, what does my job look like 2 to 3 years from now? Is it going to be outsourced to India? Is it going to be me working with an AI agent that will make me do a lot more work in less time and make my life easier? Or will a migrant be taking my job? You never know what's going to happen. But if you have that long-term perspective, yeah. So if you go into the medical industry right now and you work right now as a healthcare manager, you should think, what does that look like in the future, right? Should you be working in different aspects? I think another trend that is mentioned online, interestingly enough, is physical therapy, because many people spend so many hours sitting in their job, sitting at home, or they might not get a standing desk. They might have poor posture. They're looking at their phone and hunched over. That a big thing in the future would be physical therapy, that people will look for. Oh, what's the mobility exercises I can do? How can I get a massage? How can I get the appropriate treatment maybe for my tendons and my ligaments to maintain my health, because people are not maintaining good posture and things like that. And sometimes people get caught up in fad trends, right? In London, there's a big thing. Let me know what it's like where you're at, where there's a lot of running clubs and lots of people are running. Now, of course, you can go for a run. It's not saying it's bad for your health, but when you're running on concrete, like most people are, that's really bad for your knees. You should be running on grass or running on a softer kind of like asphalt, different type of platforms that are different type of surfaces that are better for your knees. So I see all these people going on running clubs and things like that. I'm like, yeah, running on concrete is really not good for you, but it is what it is. Let's hide that. And you see all people in the gym and things do really like, things that aren't too good for your health in terms of, not doing things to the best form. So we are going to go on to this new segment here, which is all about AI pushing tech workers into blue collar jobs, right? So we've been talking about tech. We've been talking about how people are essentially, being pushed out of tech, working in blue collar jobs, right? In terms of, this has 335,000 views. And it's only been out for about a month. And that's kind of links to the earlier point, like where are the growing areas? So you might be in tech on a high 6-figure salary. You've been spending the last year or two looking for a job. And the only thing available right now is those blue collar jobs, right? Those kind of more technical blue collar jobs, where it could be a solar panel installer, wind turbine, things like that. So let's listen to this clip here.
Changing. Gen Z's pivot from college to...
Whoa, I cannot hear it. 1 second.
Changing. Gen Z's pivot from college to blue-collar jobs, from student debt to the rise in AI. In 2025, 4 out of 10 young people with a university degree are opting for blue-collar careers. Just 22% of U.S. adults say college was worth it. But this is not rare, since the supply of office jobs has been increasingly reduced due to automation.
New college graduates are facing one of the most challenging markets for entry-level jobs in a decade.
The inability of AI to perform jobs such as electrician, plumbing, or construction, has made these types of jobs more valued than ever.
30% of the things that you do at work right now could be automated in the next 3 years, which is why more young people are shifting to blue-collar jobs.
Likewise, the average...
So you mentioned quite a few statistics there, right? Thanks, you can hear my video, that's good. So let's go through a few points there. I went through a short clip, the next clip will be a bit longer, but it's talking about people going into blue collar jobs, people realizing that college debt is not a great thing. So the thing is, student debt, right? A lot of people can see through the lie now, right? Lots of people are seeing these debates on college campuses with Charlie Kirk or Stephen Crowder, other people like that, Ben Shapiro, and they're like, hold on, you know, lots of colleges are not teaching you anything useful. They're just brainwashing you to be a weak liberal, right? So they're not really, lots of people are thinking outside the box. They're thinking the system is a scam. How can I adapt with regards to it? So I'm pausing it here because it says 4 out of 10 university graduates are shifting to blue collar careers because, you know, when everyone has a degree, it doesn't differentiate you because everyone looks the same, right? If everyone has an economics degree, then how are you better than the next person? And the way I could differentiate myself early on in my career is I did 2 summer internships, one at a financial data analytics firm and one at an investment bank on the trading floor. And I didn't get the top grades. I got a 2-1, which is like getting a decent degree at a good university. But many people who had got top degrees, they got first class honors, they couldn't find a job, or they got a really like trash finance job working in the back office because they didn't have experience. So that's how I differentiated myself from others, even though I wasn't someone getting the highest grades. If you can't differentiate yourself from other people, you don't want to have a pointless degree like many people have liberal arts degrees in, say, you know, I don't know, history, English literature, things like that. That's not really going to help you. So you have to think outside the box. And some people are realizing blue collar careers are the best thing for them, right? So if 4 out of 10 university graduates, that's quite a lot. I know these are statistics and polls. They don't necessarily represent everybody in the world. But that's like 40% of people, essentially, based on this, is quite high. They're giving up on university. They're thinking about opportunities, right? And also people are thinking about what works for them, right? If you think about it, the amount of people going into university, and if you think about a general population, not all of population are meant to be working desk jobs, right? Some people are physically more skilled, right? And it doesn't sit right with them to sit at a desk all day staring at a screen. So it's only right there should be more people in blue collar careers. You know, if you look back in history, now we have such a focus on social status. What job do you have? What job title do you have? In the past, it's more like, if you really look back centuries ago, right? We had the class system, the caste system. I know some of these things are controversial, but the whole concept is that you're born into a certain skill type, right? Some people are born to be farmers or carpenters or philosophers or warriors and work in the army. It wasn't like, oh, if you work as a soldier, you're low status, but if you work as a banker, you're high status. It's more like people were born into certain roles and everyone had the respect because they understand to have a functioning society and system and country and civilization, you have to have people who are military soldiers, right? Roman soldiers. You have to have people who are in the political field. It wasn't like, oh, everyone has to be a multi-millionaire podcaster or something, right? So influencer. So that's really what people are seeing. They're like, okay, cool. What's my life realistically look like? What really meshes with my personality and where is there a demand? And that's the kind of intersection you need to look at, is what was my skills and interest versus what the demand is. And it might not be perfect. You know, everyone might want to, you know, work as a software engineer at Google, but that might not be realistic. So you have to think about what is actually available to you and then how you can maybe pivot to what you want over time or do it as a side hustle, things like that. So like I say, some people are just made to work in manual labor, and that's not something that should be looked down upon because that's important, right? Some people are meant to work in logistics and trucking and things like that. That's just a legit function of society. And now there's another statistic that comes up here.
College was worth it.
So it says just 22% of US adults thought that college was worth it if a student had to take out loans to attend. 22% of US adults thought that college was worth it, right? That is very low, right? So I'm assuming these are from good statistics sources. It mentions Pew Research and Small Writing. So 22%. That's crazy, right? So I think, I don't know what demographic they asked these questions to, but I assume US adults who had went through the college system or new people who had, and they ended up in the workforce, they're like, oh, was the college actually worth it, right? And the college in many ways is like an expensive ticket into a corporate job. The same thing with university. That's what you're paying for. You're paying for a piece of paper that says, you know what, I've passed the social status test to work that corporate job. And I remember many people when I was at college, this is quite interesting, right? When I was at college, and there are certain top colleges that the big four companies would go for, you know, the accounting firms, the big four, Deloitte, KPMG, Ernst & Young, PwC, I think I'm forgetting one, KPMG. So what they would do is they would go to top colleges and say, you know, you could go to university if you want, or as soon as you graduate college, we'll hire you and we'll train you up. So instead of going to university, we'll just, you know, you can get into the workforce early. I'll start earning a salary and try to move up in your career that way, rather than spending 3 to 4 years in a university degree that might not work for you. So that's a good thing to consider, you know. Many people can go straight into the workforce without university or without college in some cases. So you have to think carefully whether that would work for you and if there are opportunities available to you. Because I think, what did I learn about at university? Yeah, I learned some writing and mathematical skills and life skills, living independently, you know, by myself, away from parents and things like that. But, you know, it wasn't loads of skills I learned. If I spent those 4 years instead of at university in the workforce, then I don't think I would have been any worse off. I would have learned office politics a lot earlier and maybe not kind of burnt years working hard and that not paying off. And then we've got another interesting statistic here. Just at the bottom, it says AI study, 30% of your work could be automated. Now, in the short term, what does it actually mean? It actually means that, in my opinion, everyone's going to have like an AI agent that's assisting them through their job, which, you know, you can kind of use your, you know, different resources and tools that are available to you right now, like checking your company intranet for company policies, you know, going through folders and documents, but that would be done by an AI agent. Or you can just ask an AI agent, oh, can you find this information for me in the documents and just summarize it for me from a company policy. Those are the type of things that will be automated in the shorter term. And then we're going to move on to the next clip, but I'm going to go through your comments right now.
Imagine being able to build an app with your name on it, just by thinking about it. Meet Base 44.
Gun to change.
So just one quick second. Let me just go back. Cool. So let me go through your comments. Arvin said it's really sad that even STEM is becoming saturated. I'm super lucky for getting into my path. I was always aggressive about internships and it's paid off. Yeah, you definitely need to get experience as early as possible. That's the only thing I think that helped me. Otherwise, I'd be someone else who had a good degree from a decent university. If we move on to Z Team, he says, slept through 2 degrees in video, wanted to be an artist, don't do it. Basically, you're trained to make industrial grade, you know, star propaganda. So yeah, that is what it is. I originally got into electrical engineering back in 2003. The market was being massively misrepresented. And this is what everything's a scam in this system, right? So they're always going to, like, for example, they're really going to sell you that you should go to university just so the system can put you in lots of debt that you have to pay off for the rest of your life, right? Then the system will lie and say, I'll go into this particular field, even if it's not the best field, when there's people making money from that. And one thing that comes to mind is, remember all the hype about learn to code, going to the tech industry the last few years. And I think, where did that hype come from? Right. Firstly, it's because people are losing jobs in other industries, like the media industry, and people use it as a joke to poke fun at journalists. Oh, learn to code. You know, you lost your job. You should go into tech and prove yourself that you have technical skills instead of just lying in the media, because the media had a really bad rap last 2 years as being liars and manipulators. So it partly came from that, but my theory is that a lot of these tech boot camps that make, you know, tens of thousands of dollars from everyone who signs up for their boot camp could see the decline, right? Could see the layoffs coming up, could see the bloated industry, could see how many average people were heading into tech. And what they did, they made one big push, like, let's make it sound like everyone has to get into tech right now. And that's what they promoted. Oh, you have to do a tech boot camp. You have to learn how to code. Otherwise you won't be able to work. Everyone has to be in tech. And so many people fell for that psyop, they fell for that marketing campaign, and then they can't find a job. So it's worthwhile considering who's promoting what to you and what their agenda is. All students were basically guaranteed jobs until our professor informed us that the school was owned by a few auto companies who just laid off all their senior engineers. So this is what I mean, right? You got to think, what is the deeper agenda here? It's the same thing really when you think about promotions. There's only a handful of people who make it to managing director in investment banks, but they're always going to sell you the idea that, oh, if you just work hard, everyone can make it to managing director, but only a handful of people can, and it's not necessarily the most skilled. Then C-Team says, for the record, we had electronic robots running on water back then, but it was deemed too unsafe, and they were kind of right. So, yeah. So I don't know all the technical details there, but yeah, I think it's interesting seeing how the industry changes and how much lies come up throughout any industry you're in. So let's go to the next clip here.
$100,000 a year have begun to change.
My name is Rich Adamandadis. I'm 30 years old. I'm a journeyman plumber. I live in San Antonio, Texas, and I expect to make $105,000 to $125,000 this year.
But to understand how white-collar workers are opting for blue-collar jobs, we have to go back several decades, when blue-collar jobs were not so attractive. In the 1960s, blue-collar jobs such as plumbers, electricians, and mechanics were the heart of the manufacturing economy and urban development. In the 60s, construction, agriculture, and manufacturing employed a large part of the U.S. workforce. In those sectors, less than 10% of workers had a university degree, while less than 50% had higher education. And some branches recorded a high school graduation rate of barely 55%. From the 1980s to the 2000s, the economy began its transition toward the service sector and high-tech industries. University degrees became increasingly valued. Many young people aspired to white-collar jobs, associating them with better income and professional status, while the perception of manual trades became less attractive.
Since the last half of the 20th century, a college degree has been touted as a must-have for a stable and successful career.
I did grow up around a lot of people telling me college was the route that you should go.
My parents were always hounding me about going to college. All the teachers reminded you about making sure you get good grades so you can pass elementary school, middle school, and go to college.
In the early 2000s, outsourcing consolidated office work as the ideal in areas such as administration, finance, and technology. Meanwhile, technical trades were left behind, perceived as less modern, less remunerated, or of lower social prestige. But since the rise of remote work due to the pandemic in 2020, added to the recent advances in AI, tasks that until recently were considered safe began to be automated. The security of office jobs resided in their cognitive component, that is, the need for analysis. But recent developments in generative models and process automation are performing those tasks at unprecedented speed and scale. The consequence is not only job loss, but a transformation of labor demand. Tasks that require physical intervention.
So before we continue this, right, so it's quite interesting what they're saying here. Firstly, we have a plumber who's said he's at the start, he's making close to 125K, so a six-figure salary. And it's interesting seeing how trends go. And this is why you've got to be careful about following trends. Many people went from working in the trades to the offices, like you says, over several decades. And then they're also talking about how, what's going on in this society right now. And there's a couple key trends here. And this is how social trends link to the economy too, right? I would say, when you're dealing with a recession, or the situation we're in now with this kind of dysfunctional economy, which kind of is in a recession, even though they pretend it's not, where you have essentially what people care about is how much money they're making after tax, right? So people are going to be like, oh, well, I can, earn a high six-figure salary in London, but what's the point if I'm going to pay like 40% tax? I might as well make less money and have a chill life, right? And have better work-life balance. Or they're thinking, let me go to another country whereby I could have a better quality of life, or pay less tax, or even earn less, but have a better quality of life. So people are thinking about all these type of situations. So what's mattering here is income and also lifestyle. Another point to make is that status. People don't care about social status as much as you think. Now, a lot of people are going to go, well, hold on, we have all these people who are on social media and they're feeling insecure, and comparison is a theft of joy. But I think in a way, social status matters less than ever, because so many people can't achieve some of those basic social status elements. Some people can't buy that big house in the suburbs, that expensive house. And many people are giving up. And many people, it's like, how can you compare yourself to someone else when the life circumstances are so different? Or you work hard and do the right thing, and then unfortunately you have a layoff. And so many people are caught up in these circumstances, like a cycle of layoff, back-to-back years of layoffs, or being unemployed, going back into the workforce. It's like hard to compare people on an even playing field, like who's winning the social status game. So that doesn't kind of work. So what I see is social status not mattering. And a lot of guys thinking, well, I'll just go and work into the trades because, I mean, I don't care if people perceive me negatively. This is a broken society. I don't even know my neighbors. I'm losing in many ways when it comes to, you know, keeping my parents happy and having a stable job and a stable relationship and getting married and having kids. Like, it's such a broken social dynamic. It's like, why would I worry about that? I'm just going to think about what's going to give me the income and lifestyle I care about. The other point here, it mentions about less attractive jobs. Now, as men, do we really care about less attractive jobs? What do they mean in this situation? They mean less attractive to women or less attractive to society. But like I say, people are not listening to the dumb woman brain or the dumb societal brain and trends, because all these trends tend to be lies. They tend to be lies manufactured by the media or groupthink. And we know how dumb people are since 2020, right? The groupthink, oh, what is everybody saying? Should we go ahead and, you know, listen to the official rules, which are obviously lies, the official narrative, which is obviously lies? You can't follow social trends. That's the dumb move to make. And many people are like, well, I don't care what everyone else is doing. And you see this play out in kind of weird dysfunctional ways where people are being rude on public transport and in social settings or in the grocery store, at the gym, things like that. But also people are just being like, well, I don't care. I'm just here to you know, make money. I don't care if people think, oh, I'm a trucker, I have a CDL license, and, you know, I don't really talk to people. I'm not in a relationship, but I'm making money so I can retire early. I know lots of guys, I see them on you know, different discussion groups, anonymous Twitter or YouTube accounts. And a lot of these guys are just exiting society and trying to make as much money as they can. They don't care about what's less attractive as a career. So a lot of guys are going to go into blue collar jobs. And then the other thing is, like I say, be careful of advice you're getting with regards to your career and your future from people who haven't had success in your field. Or if you have baby boomers, you know, even you might respect your parents and family members, they're just so detached from the job market right now and the situation you're in as an individual man, typically watching this channel, or some woman watching this channel too. It's like, be careful about taking their advice. You know, I know people who've been pressured by their parents to buy big houses, and then they knew their job wasn't stable. They lost their job, had a, you know, rough breakup before a marriage, and then the house they bought, they have to sell that off. It becomes very dysfunctional. Keep your living costs low. Be prepared to be hyper flexible and adaptable, right? Be ready to job hop, be ready to location hop in certain cases. And that's why it's just better not to follow the boomer advice of becoming a materialist, in the sense, right? You want to be quick to move. Like, let's just say you get offered a high paying job in another state in the US or overseas. Do you have a bunch of junk you're going to have to put in a storage store that you don't actually need, right? And most people, like I say, you're single or you're in a relationship, but you can travel light, you can move light, you need to be flexible. That's what's more important. The real status flex these days, in my opinion, is to be able to be hyper flexible, not be tied down to a 25-year mortgage for an oversized house that you don't need. That is, you know, really burning your salary every month because you have to pay so much in utility bills because, you know, the inflation, and you have all these rooms you're not even using. And I see people with these big houses and I'm thinking, what's the point? Like, you know, it's not only that you're paying a massive mortgage, you have very high costs every month, right? So you got to think and be flexible in your career with your finances and location too. So like I say, think about your natural skills. If you are naturally inclined to physical skills, don't go into a technical career and learn how to code just for the sake of it. And another point here is not just AI that is taking people's jobs. Another thing to consider would be migrants who are coming to, you know, Western countries and taking some of these jobs. You know, the infamous H1B visas from Indian workers who are going to America and working some of the jobs and suppressing the wage growth for tech workers there and taking the jobs. Then we've got automation, of course, AI, things like that, but also offshoring. You know, tons of jobs in the finance industry are offshored from Western countries to either Eastern Europe or, again, typically Mumbai in India, right? So be aware of that. It's not just AI. We can't blame AI for everything. So let's go through a quick comment from Arvin before we go through another clip of this video. I genuinely like my job because it's more than well paid. Mechanical engineering is definitely hands-on compared to desk jobs. Very technical too, if anyone's interested. Yeah, I've worked with a few of my coaching clients and they are working in engineering in slightly different fields. in commodities and things like that. So yeah, it's definitely an interesting field to be in. Let's continue to listen to this video.
Manual skills and on-site presence have become more valuable. This has made many young people question whether it is still worth obtaining a university degree today.
Do you need a college degree to land a high-paying job? It appears that some companies are now hiring applicants who don't have a degree. It's leaving many to wonder, is a degree really necessary?
Global reports show that a substantial proportion of current work time is exposed to automation. Indeed, between 1/3 and 1/2 of work activities could be automated with current and emerging technologies. For example, in the United States, some estimates place around 30% of office work hours as potentially automated by 2030. On the other hand, tasks that demand physical presence and specialized manual skills have increased in demand. This is because these jobs cannot be performed remotely by a machine, since they require physical presence and practical abilities. An electrician, for example, cannot be replaced by an algorithm working from a computer.
There are people needed to maintain, inspect, repair, maintain our infrastructure across sectors, energy, water, supply chain, and the likes. AI can't fix, bridges. AI can't repair machinery.
Goldman Sachs.
So before we continue with Goldman Sachs and that little comment there, so a couple of things here to look out for. What are the trends where they have growing jobs or growing opportunities? Firstly, when you have an on-site presence, you can't do it remotely. You can't do work from home, WFH, and you can't do WFI, which is work from India, right? So a lot of these work from home jobs could be outsourced to India over time. So if you need to be in the office, it could be a tech help desk where you're helping with hardware issues, not software issues that can be remotely fixed from India. It's where you have to be in the office in London or New York, for example, and fixing people's actually hardware issues, right? Like the PCs on the trading floor. Also, what's interesting here is some of the growth areas or the stable jobs are, like I say, anything you need to do in person, like food delivery services. And unfortunately, the tech help desk guy and the food delivery service guy, they're not necessarily the highest paying jobs. It's not like being a senior software engineer at Google, for example, right? So you have to kind of adapt to this very difficult economy whereby, some of the jobs that are stable and that are in person are actually not the most high status. And then there's an interesting statistic they shared here. 33 to 55% of work activities could be automated, which is similar to the statistics we saw before, right? In my opinion, this will be like over the longer term. Over the short term, what you're going to have is AI starts as a helper or an assistant, and then every office worker has an AI assistant on their laptop, like a piece of software, and then over time it could replace workers rather than immediately. Like I think a lot of the layoffs and things like that we've seen in recent years, everything's getting blamed on AI, but it's due to a slowing economy, due to outsourcing some work and things like that to foreign countries. It's not just all AI, right? So AI will have an impact over time. There's so much talk about AI and people don't really want to think this through, but you really should. There have been lots of different hypes and bubbles over time, right? So there's been the dot-com bubble where they had all these tech companies that went bust over time. AOL, you don't really hear about AOL as much. I remember AOL Online, you might remember that if you were around when internet was being launched at a retail level. So you got to be aware of what the hype is. There was a crypto bubble where, do you remember when everyone was talking about blockchain, all the companies, all the banks? So we got blockchain technology, the big thing, the blockchain technology. I remember all the fucking midwits that I had to work with on the trading floor. Oh, we're going to incorporate blockchain technology. We're not so keen on crypto or Bitcoin, but blockchain is what we need. These people can't think for themselves. They're just annoying people. Anyway, so the point is, first AI, like I say, it starts as a helper, and then people are just using AI as a reference point. Senior management who all want to talk about AI, we want to implement AI because they want to keep their investors happy, right? It's more sort of a buzzword than like reality in certain cases. And then we've got this other statistic here. 30% of office hours could be automated by 2030. I think that's realistic. And I think that's partly why the system is pushing for depopulation, right? Less people means, less demand for jobs, right? Less dependence on a UBI, universal basic income type of situation. So it makes sense that over time, you know, over the next 5 years, that could happen. I think it will be a slower rate than that. When I see all these statistics, you know what it reminds me of? All the talk about the climate changing, right? And of course, you could see this change in climate from summer to autumn to winter to spring, right? Or the general heating up of the earth, right, which goes through natural trends due to the sun changing and things like that. I won't get into that theory, but the whole point is some of these things are completely overblown. It's like saying, oh, you know what, the ice caps are melting, oh no, you know, half of America is going to be underwater by 2030. Some of these statistics are a bit over the top, in my opinion. Let's go listen to the next clip here.
Sachs estimated that 25% of repetitive legal tasks in the United States were automated, resulting in a 15% decrease in the demand for paralegals between 2020 and 2025. The salaries of these office roles also stagnated, as administrative assistants' wages increased only 5% between 2020 and 2025, while customer service representatives reported an increase of just 4.1%, according to the Bureau of Labor Statistics.
With Google Workspace, you can create a Gmail account with your own domain and
statistics. Employment of electricians will grow 11% between 2023 and 2033, while that of plumbers and pipe fitters will increase 6% in the same period, figures above the general average. In terms of salaries, blue-collar workers have experienced significant growth. According to a Forbes report, the fastest growing jobs through 2032 will be blue-collar, with 1.7 million new positions projected. Construction workers saw an 18.4% wage increase, with salaries reaching up to $75,000 in 2025. Plumbers experienced even greater growth, with a 17.5% increase since 2020, and in high-demand areas such as California, the average salary reached up to $99,000. Electricians also saw a significant increase, with average salaries of $98,000 in states such as New Jersey, a 21.4% increase. Welders, another key trade, reached a 20% increase from 2020 to date, according to the Bureau of Labor Statistics. This wage increase has made blue-collar jobs more attractive to those displaced from office jobs.
Now, blue-collar workers are seeing a faster wage growth than those white-collar jobs. It's a trend this country has not seen in years.
This wage growth in blue-collar trades is due to several factors, such as the shortage of skilled labor, the aging workforce, and the growing demand driven by infrastructure projects. For example, wind turbine technicians, an emerging role in recent years, earned on average $87,000 in 2024, with projected job growth of 60% between 2023 and 2033. The decline of office jobs has driven a massive transition of white-collar workers toward blue-collar trades.
So before we continue this, right, so this is kind of interesting here. Essentially what we have, right, is a lot of jobs that are going, and a lot of blue collar jobs, a lot of white collar jobs they see in decline over time, and a lot of blue collar jobs that are doing quite well. What we need to kind of compare here is kind of the sad reality there is that, yes, there's more a demand for trades and things like that, but they're not necessarily the highest paying job. We're not seeing any high six-figure jobs, right? Are we here? We're hearing, oh, there's an increase in 60% demand for wind turbine engineers, and they're going to be getting paid 75K, which isn't the highest salary. It's not like, oh, you're going from a 150K at Google to working in wind turbine installing, and you're going to take a 50% pay cut down to 75K. So it's kind of difficult still. I don't think we can just see this as one-for-one replacement in terms of job quality and life. A lot of jobs that will go in the short term that makes sense in the white collar world will be paralegals, assistants, secretaries, girl jobs, jobs where, people are assistants and helpers, which again, AI assistants are going to replace that. I know some people who have online businesses. And if you have an online business, you need lots of kind of quick help that you might have a virtual assistant for, like an assistant in a developing country, like in the Philippines. And if AI can do that, then there's going to be job losses there. And a lot of people don't think about that. They just think, it's going to be job losses in the offices. But some of these freelance jobs, some of these like a translator, for example, you might need a translator for like legal documents and things like that. But a lot of it, that just quick translations you could do with with an AI assistant. Now, we got a lot of salary comparisons here, right? And they went through so many different salaries there, right? They see a 5% increase in admin assistant salaries, which is kind of modest, I would say. But then electricians are going up 11% increase in their salary, and then 6% for plumbers, 60% for wind turbine technicians. And then by 2030, 1.7 million blue collar jobs, I think they mentioned, are going to increase or something like that. And then it says 20% salary increase for construction workers, plumbers, but not for most average, office jobs. And I can see those increases happening. But what's interesting is like, okay, there's different ways of looking at it. They're going to be building all this infrastructure, but then many people will still want to be working office jobs. So what's going to happen? You're going to build all this infrastructure, then where people are going to live. And that's what makes me suspicious about things. When you see all these apartments going up that no one can afford, right? You've got these, 2-bedroom apartment in like relatively normal part of London, for example, could cost $400,000, right? It's $400,000 for like a 2-bedroom apartment. People are not making high salaries compared to that. So are they building all these apartments to create 15-minute cities because, they want to keep people there on UBI, universal basic income, some kind of socialist lifestyle they want people to be living in with a VR headset, and they're just consuming and consuming and doing things like that and not really doing much work? What is the actual agenda here? Because if you have all this construction without white collar jobs to match it, it kind of seems a bit suspicious. And if we pause at 4:53, if we go back a second, I had a little comment to make here. So 25% of US legal tasks will be automated, right? So if you look at some of these jobs, it makes sense, right? A paralegal who's doing a lot of assistant tasks for the legal expert, that makes sense. That'll be AI automated. So that's worthwhile considering that. I also think about on the trading floor, many senior management, they had a literal assistant who typically a female employee who worked part-time, and she'd help organize his meetings and do some printing for him and things like that. And I think if you have an AI assistant, can easily replace that secretary. Like, do you really need a secretary if you can just basically go, maybe you have a ChatGPT secretary that's tailor-made to the company, and you can just type into AI, oh, print this document, let me know when my next meeting is. Can you reschedule my meeting in my Outlook calendar from 3 p.m. today to 3 p.m. next week? Can you produce some meeting notes from the meeting I'm going to have tomorrow? Can you transcribe this audio into 5 bullet points so I can prepare for my next meeting? You don't need a secretary or assistant for that, right? Those type of jobs where people aren't really putting in much effort, they're going to get lost as AI gets implemented. So it's like, what are the trends here? We have a lack of skilled labor, so there's a higher demand there. We have aging a population of people who will be kind of stuck in the office. And then you have infrastructure projects. So it's kind of like, it's very interesting what's going on. Like, what we're going to have developed infrastructure, but not many office jobs, and then an aging population. So there's lots of different dynamics here. We can't, like I say, blame it all on the economy. Blame it all on AI, I mean. So we've got here, Z-Team Video says, it's all grapes of wraith to shuffle around and devalue skilled labor and labor. Yeah, it does seem like there's a deeper agenda here. We can't say it's just the economy changing through the economic cycle. Cord Fortina says, how come the poll doesn't show yes, I'll be on UBI? Yeah, I try not to blackpill too much about UBI. I still think there's going to be a need for the human spirit. I don't know if we're going to have UBI definitely and things like that, and human beings are going to be slaves and things like that. So I try not to think about that too much. I try to think about how the economy is changing, how I can facilitate that, help people in their career transitions. Because I just, I know it's easy to be like, oh, the world's ending, everything's going to be terrible. But I try not to think like that. We've got a Z-Team video saying, not sure what they're going to do with all these new constructions no one can afford. In Chicago, everyone works from home now. Downtown office space is essentially worthless. Yeah. So the CRE thing, which stands for commercial real estate, is quite interesting, because even when I was in the office way before the lockdown situation of 2020, I was always thinking, hold on, like, what's the point of being in the office when I can do this from home? There's many times I logged in to work from home in the evenings, and I'd just be like, well, what's the point of being in the office? I can do everything from home. And yeah, it's just pointless. And it's interesting because I hear some people thinking, oh no, the commercial real estate's going to come back. People are going to be back in the office soon. No one wants to be in the office. The only one who wants to be in the office is middle management, senior management, so they can appear to be doing some work that they're not actually doing. And it makes sense. And I've covered this briefly before. I'll have it in future videos about how middle management is being removed because you don't need a lot of middle management. And on one hand, that's good because you have more autonomy as a more junior worker. But on the other hand, it's like taking the next step up in your career. It's like there's no one in that role. They won't want someone at the mid-level, right? And that mid-level job might seem pointless, but it also is a steady middle-class salary where you can afford a family. But many people are just not going to have that because there's just going to be that senior management at the top and everyone else at the lower levels or the bottom. Let's listen to another clip here. Oh no, we got another advert. Let's wait for the advert to go.
According to McKinsey, by 2030, 12 million workers in the United States will need occupational transitions, with 80% coming from administrative and office roles. This migration has accelerated due to the automation of cognitive tasks by generative AI. A report from Revelio Labs noted that job postings for white-collar roles such as software developers and business analysts decreased by 12.7% between the first quarter of 2024 and the first quarter of 2025. And the same report highlighted that wages for these positions have remained stagnant since mid-2024. In contrast, blue-collar jobs saw a 46% increase in job postings compared to pre-pandemic levels. This transition has been particularly notable among young and middle-aged workers seeking financial stability and growth opportunities.
There's definitely a lot of young people that are looking at college and questioning, is this worth it? You know, the time, the effort, but also the debt. We see those numbers in the tens of thousands on average, rising over time.
This has led many young people to reconsider investing in university degrees, which on average can cost between $100,000 and $200,000, according to the College Board. With the decline of white-collar jobs and the increase in tech layoffs, young people see blue-collar trades as viable alternatives. Apprenticeship programs for these types of trades cost less than $10,000 and combine practical and theoretical training, allowing young people to enter these fields without significant debt. According to the American Association of Community Colleges, 60% of young people consider blue-collar trades more respected today than decades ago, and 70% value their stability. Likewise, according to Indeed, 40% of high school graduates opt for vocational training over universities, prioritizing quick income and job security.
More than half of Gen Z workers say they're now seriously considering blue-collar or skilled trade work.
This transition, supported by training programs and a cultural shift,
Yeah. So essentially, what is the point there, right? So if we go back to 7-Eleven, it says by 2030, 12 million US workers will need occupational transitions. And what does that mean, right? That's the corporate way of saying people will be pushed out their job into another industry, right? So the transition could be, you know, low-level employees who are doing white-collar work, who are doing admin work, which could be in many cases, you know, migrant workers who just moved over to the West. It could be, you know, jobs that get outsourced. It could be jobs that are taken over by AI and automation. What will people do? They'll have to go into the trades. There'll be many people who make that transition. And then if we go to this other point I paused here. 46% rise in construction and manufacturing job postings.
6%
in job postings, right? So that's quite a massive raise of that. And what I would do if I was, obviously I focus mainly on white collar jobs on my channel, you all know my background, but what I would do in that field is I'd constantly be looking at the same way I approach for my coaching clients, right? Is, okay, where is the demand right now? Because maybe you just dealt with a layoff from a white collar job, you want to move it to blue collar. You go, okay, where's the demand right now? Where's the demand long term? Where's the high paying jobs? How can I transition my career path in a way where it's like, okay, I'll be in the growing area that pays well, that has a long-term stability path as best as you can get it, rather than just being like, what's available right now. And not only what's the long-term stability and growing area, but where's the opportunity for self-employment? And if you watch my channel, you're typically like my personality, where you want to be your own boss in a sense, whether it's through being a manager in a corporate environment, working as a freelancer, consultant, however that would be. You don't want someone bossing you around for the rest of your life. You don't want to be 45 years old and, you know, some girl boss or some boomer is dictating to you, you came to the office 5 minutes late. You'd rather be a consultant at that point, or semi-retired, right? However it could work for you. So the same approach should apply for blue collar work, right? Maybe you work at a major plumbing company or an electrician company, and you think, okay, over time I'm going to learn the skills so I can do solar panel installation and work on wind turbines, maybe do both, and then I can work as a consultant or work for half the year and then spend half the year traveling, right? Whatever that would be. And I know many people who are experts in their field who do some kind of setup like that through their self-employment. Arvin says, the point is money and power, don't complicate it. Let me know if you can explain that in a bit of detail in the next comment. So here we've got that, right? So job postings, they more stability and growth there. There's a high demand, at least for the next 2 to 3 years, I would say, at the bare minimum. And then college degrees, when you contrast it with that, how many people do college degrees that end up not being worth it, a waste of time, obsolete type of degrees that are oversaturated markets, and lots of things you learn on a college degree, you can learn online for free, right? And then I think about what I'm offering to my clients, right? What I'm offering, I'm not giving you the cookie cutter, here's how you do financial forecasting, here's how you understand the economy, here's how interest rate works. What I really help with my clients is, you know, give them a clear sense of direction of what's the best move for them next, but also understanding office politics and those type of dynamics, which are kind of important and unspoken, even though they're reality. It's a bit like a pickup artist, right? A dating coach who's going to explain all the unspoken dynamics of how gender dynamics actually work. That's kind of what I do with office politics and career coaching, right? So it's kind of a unique niche whereby those are all the things you really need to understand. Anything that's maybe more technical, you can do by yourself, right? You can go ahead and, you know, do a $20 course and learn how to code JavaScript, right? And practice yourself. So, you know, a lot of these college degrees are overpriced and kind of useless. Arvin says, as you mentioned, Gen Z is fed up with the status quo and would rather get their own power and money than putting up with the BS as much as they can. Again, yeah. And what's interesting, a reoccurring theme with some of my clients is, you know, pursuing that freedom. And that could be time freedom, financial freedom, living life on their own terms. Gen Z, or even a bit older, they're not necessarily chasing, like I say, a job title. They're like, okay, how much can I invest each month? How much, when could I retire? How can I plan for maybe a change in my career? How can I maybe get some freelance work on the side while I work a corporate job? These are the typical nuances you need to consider, rather than just how can I climb the career path and live in a high cost of living area like New York or London. That might not be feasible for you over the long term. Now, the other thing to consider is, you know, what's a lower barrier of entry, which they covered briefly here. You know, if you do an apprenticeship, you could, you know, do an apprenticeship for 10K and learn and immediately start working in the trades. And it's no debt. You just need to stay focused and stay on that career path as working in the trades. Versus, you know, if you do a college degree, a university degree, it's like 4 years deep and you're trying to make more, do tons more work for, you know, doing your degree without getting paid. And that's why I mentioned, you know, sometimes you might want to transition to working in the trades, because it's like a quick qualification you can do over a couple of years, doesn't cost a ton of money, you can immediately start working. And, you know, and a lot of these jobs that you learn, right, the skills you learn working in the trades, you can easily flex and flip that to a self-employment thing, right? So you can work on a construction site for a company Monday to Friday, and in the evenings go and do a few handyman jobs. And then also on the weekends, you can do a bit more money and get paid cash, right? So it's off the books. You should report it to the tax man, but I'm sure many of these guys don't report it to the tax man and they get tons of money in cash, right? So that's a worthwhile thing to consider, right? It's very difficult to transition your business studies degree where you can work in an office to a side income, right? A side hustle, unlike working in the trades. So like I say, these type of perception of low status, what jobs working in the trades, it doesn't matter. I mean, as a man, let me know. I've already got a poll that's on this. kind of chat for the video, but let me know in the comments, do you personally care about how your job's perceived, whether it's low status or high status, or do you care about the money you're making? I think men nowadays care less and less about social status, even though you hear about so much talk about high value man being a high status man. I think more and more men just don't care. They're like, well, I'm not playing the game anyway. I don't really care whether you think I'm going into the trade, so I'm a low status man. People don't really care anymore, to be honest. And they don't care about society's opinions, the opinions of boomers, the government, the media that lies all the time, or in many cases, men don't really care about the opinion of women anymore, right? So it's a very interesting dynamic. I would say, what if you should go into the trades if you want to have that quick income boost rather than, you know, spending years at college or university or living with your parents. And many people who work in these office jobs, they're stuck living with their parents. If you're maybe focused on the trades, you might be more focused on being a minimalist and quickly moving out from your parents' house, and even maybe having not necessarily the highest standard of living, but at least being independent so you can work quickly rather than going to college and university and debt and wasting time till you can, you know, be in your mid-20s and before you transition from a child to an adult who's earning an income, rather than waiting until you're 25, right? Having a stable office job, you might be able to start working in your early 20s. And then we've got X Salams here who's saying, I have almost 8 years of experience. One second. I have almost 8 years of experience as web developer. AI will make developers more productive, so companies will need less developers. Yeah, I definitely think that'll happen over time. I covered that in some of my earlier comments, so that's interesting. Thanks for adding that based on your experience. There's a couple comments that stand out here, right? So we have Que Loco TV Official. He says white collar industries is, let me hide the comment. White collar industries is saturated. 3 to 4 interviews, each 1 to 3 hours, competing with 500 applicants. At the end, the person who gets hired is the son or friend of senior level managers. Meanwhile, I quit and find another trucking job in 2 weeks. So that's a great example, right? Someone, you have all these long interview processes. You know, I worked with some of my clients that I'm helping coach for their jobs. They have like 8 interviews for one job. And it's like, how many times do you need to interview the same person, right? You can maybe have, rather than 8 interviews, you can then maybe do 3 interviews where you have 3 people working at the company interviewing the person who's being interviewed, one of my clients, and you can interview them for 3 times and give them a case study at most. But they were like, no, we want to do 8 interviews. You need to be interviewed with each person across the globe who be doing a similar job as you, even though you're in one location. And then on top of that, we need senior people to interview you, people more junior than you, people at your level. Then we're going to give you a case study that's going to take 1 week that you have to spend tons of time and effort doing, that you don't get paid for. And then you're still not sure whether you're going to get a job. And the interview process is taking like 3 months. So I've had to go through that at like a fintech crypto company before. So it is getting a bit ridiculous. And this guy's saying that doesn't matter because he's going to work in the trucking industry and get a job every 2 weeks very easily. And I always think about those trucking jobs because I see a lot of guys going into that, right? It's just your personality type. If you're more of an introvert, you just want to get on with the work and not waste your time going through office politics. Sometimes trucking is the best option for you. I made a video, if you look on my channel, whereby an accountant, it's a Chinese American guy, an accountant who was working a stable office job, started to hate his life and hate his job. And he went into trucking and he's doing this little YouTube video. He has a smaller YouTube channel. And he's just saying he went from accounting to becoming a trucker because it's more stable. He was getting sick of the kind of office politics and the pointless time wasting in his accounting job. So like I say, there are different opportunities there. The Z-Team video says it's not an interview, it's an interrogation with these long interview processes. And that's very true. If we look at the comment on screen, David Ridson says, they're not opting to change jobs. They're doing it because there aren't job openings for their desired career path and bills need to be paid. Yeah, a lot of the occupational transition, people pivoting their career, is due to a need of market changing, right? And their ability to like live their lifestyle. And that's what the thing, this system's really pushed people into feeling like, oh, they have to work endlessly. They have to be in a situation whereby their life is their job, right? There's a term out there, workism, right? well, people have to treat their work like that's their entire life identity. And many people are like, no, I just do my job to make money. And my identity is being a father, being a husband, or focusing on my family or my country, my national identity, my patriotic identity, my community role as a leader, maybe my local community or my race, my religion, things like that. People are seeing that as like, well, that's my identity, not a corporate identity, not an identity whereby it's about based on, you know, what's my job title? People are losing faith in like these identities given to them. Oh, you're a Raiders fan, you're a football fan, you're a vegan, you're a accountant. People are like, that's not my identity. That lacks depth. People are looking for more meaning in their life, and they're rejecting a lot of those corporate identities they're being given. James says here, there was a time where I did blue collar work in my early 20s before becoming a programmer. I can't remember a single time when I had felt anxious, depressed, or prone to procrastination doing my blue collar work. After many years of being a programmer, I don't have any interest in it anymore. I find it boring, tedious, and I realize I've spent my whole life making other people rich and not getting enough in return. I would gladly work a blue collar job if I can make enough money to live comfortably. This is a really important comment, because so many of you will feel like this at different points in your life. And this goes back to what I was saying earlier in this live stream, whereby everyone is born with a purpose. And when you're doing something that's not your purpose, even if it pays well, you're going to feel depressed and miserable, because you have a soul, you have a purpose given to you by God or the universe or whatever you believe in. And you can't reject that for the rest of your life. If you're someone who's manually, who's more motivated to do more physical tasks, that makes sense. This guy doing a blue collar work said he felt more fulfilled. He didn't feel anxious, depressed, or prone to procrastinate. And your body is giving you signals. And I'm going to cover this in videos coming up next week about quiet cracking and the great exhaustion, and many people getting fed up with their job and having physical signs. They can't go to sleep. They're dealing with headaches and migraines. These are all signs you're not in the right field. You're not in the right type of job. And I know we're all dealing with work stress, financial stress, the inflation rate, whatever else. But there is a lot of signs that are just independent of that, which are just signs that you're not in the right job. You're feeling uncomfortable at work for a reason, right? You're feeling unhappy at work for a reason. So you need to kind of pay attention to those signs. So in this case, this guy is saying, look, I essentially don't feel comfortable. You know, when I was working my coding job, I feel more comfortable doing my blue collar work. And I would gladly work a blue collar job if I can make enough money to live comfortably. And I think if you do become skilled in that field, yes, you can go ahead and work the blue collar job. And this reminds me of me, right? I worked in the finance field for over a decade. And there were times when I felt anxious, depressed, prone to procrastinate, partly due to the job, partly because it's a better fit for what I'm doing now. My personality matches what I'm doing now. I grew up listening to a lot of broadcast radio. Even now when I'm not on recording my content, I listen to tons of different live streams on YouTube. I mentioned some of the right-wing niche I listen to, even the fitness niche, conspiracy theories, things like that. I'm listening to lots of live broadcasters. I love that type of format. And what I'm doing now, what makes sense for me is that kind of live broadcast setup, or just making my YouTube videos and speaking and being more of a words person than a number person, right? That's another thing to look out for, not just if you're introvert or extrovert, what matches your personality type. If you're more of a word person rather than a numbers person, then maybe you should go into things where the legal field, where it is more based on words. If you're more technical, maybe going to coding. If you're more focused on numbers, certain finance jobs might work best for you, right? So really think about your personality type there. Like, I feel like how I feel more comfortable doing this than some of the finance jobs I worked. And it's because it's more matching my personality style, right? I make like notes for scripts and YouTube videos and things like that because I like writing. I like writing emails, even though it sounds weird. But that matches my personality more. So you should really think about your personality like this guy did and realize his blue collar work is a better fit for him. I think we've covered all the comments here. We're going to switch to another thing that contradicts this, which is quite interesting. Did I go through this guy? Let me find. Yeah, we're going to switch right now. See, we've seen all these type of things. Oh, AI is taking all the jobs, but AI is creating jobs too. And AI is creating jobs here. As you can see here, the new tech and quant teams that banks are growing in the 2025, right? So let's go through a few things like this. It may come as no surprise that the big focus on a lot of newer tech teams is either banking is either AI or governance or both. The most prominent new tech team looking to grow is the generative AI platform team at Citigroup, Citibank. You're probably familiar with that company. The bank has hired founding engineers in the team earlier this year and is continuing to hire, with an opening for a VP in New York paying a salary of up to $265,000. So we got Arvind in the chat. I know you mentioned working some technical fields, coding and things like that. And we mentioned Excelams here, right? So you worked as a web developer, Arvind. So this is kind of relevant to you. I know you might not be in the finance field, but it's showing you had AI jobs around kind of coding and things like that, having those tech skills is actually paying off well. At the higher end, senior mid-level VP jobs paying up to 265K working in generative AI at Citi. And then we've got other opportunities here. According to its current listing, the team is still in the 0 to 1 phase and is looking for prolific coders with over a decade of experience, right? So that's the thing. At the lower levels, yes, there are job losses or less entry-level opportunities available, but at the more skill level, there is a lot more opportunity available to you if you have more experience at the higher end. So that's worthwhile considering. It's interesting looking at that because you do see some more skilled people who are on other YouTube or TikTok clips that I react to where they're like, oh, I'm more skilled, I can't find a job. Their ageism, you know, if I'm older, I can't find a job. But if you have the skill levels and you can transition to the right company, you will find opportunities. Then we've got JP Morgan. JP Morgan is building a new quantitative research team for the payments division of its commercial and investment bank, right? So it's hiring for associates in New York and London who will work to optimize net interest income and client pricing. The bank is looking for master's or PhD graduates with machine learning expertise and is paying salaries of up to $200,000. So we've got two opportunities here, right? Citi and JP Morgan at the more skill level in around AI jobs where they're paying over 200K or higher, right? And then we've got Bank of America. Bank of America is looking to hire a lead developer to integrate its NVIDIA partnered platform on integrating generative AI agents, right? So Bank of America, JP Morgan, and also we've got Citi, who are all looking to hire and, you know, jobs that will be above 200K. So I don't think we can say AI is taking all the jobs. Some of the high paying office jobs will still be there. It's more of the entry level and more the kind of basic tasks that won't be demanded as much, right? And then we've got control your career. Now we're going to transition to this. Before we do, I just want to give a brief overview of what I offer, right? In terms of being a career coach. So we're going to talk about this and then talk about taking control of your career with some career advice. So what you want to do, and what I'm trying to teach you here, is how to outsmart the trends, right? Figure out what works for you over time, right? Whether it's dominating office politics, whether it's avoiding traps in your career, and staying ahead, 3 moves ahead of like toxic work environments and also the AI trends and things like this, right? You want to win promotions and push forward with your career without selling your soul or making bad career moves that really cost you years of your life, right? So you don't want to be a corporate clown, and also you want to lock in power, pay, and freedom, which is what I cover throughout my career coaching. So there's a link in the description. There's the pinned comment on this live stream too, right? So you want to build leverage that works for you, that is matched to your personality style. So in the next section of this live stream, I want to cover how you can protect your career success from crazy co-workers. So this is something we all have to deal with, right, throughout our career. It's not just the challenge of AI, it's the challenge of humans, right, that you have to deal with, difficult people. So when it comes to this particular piece of advice, firstly, we're going to talk about controlling your narrative. So if you're dealing with negative co-workers that are trying to sabotage you, typically that comes in the form of people who are sharing negative feedback about you, right, to others, trying to create the perception you're useless at your job. So you need to make sure that you present yourself quite well in meetings, team meetings, meetings with senior management, meetings with co-workers on joint projects, that you are meeting your task, you are doing what's required of you, and in some cases going above and beyond. Now, what does that look like? You should have a journal to log your skills, your wins, your milestones year round, so you never get overlooked. And when it comes to review time, performance review time, you've made a list throughout the year of what you've done. Don't wait until the end of the year until you have to start logging what you've done. You should keep a log throughout the year, and keep a log of what you're doing in relation to others, so people don't try to blame you for things going wrong, like a project getting delayed. So think about, things you can log in your personal laptop or on a one document on your work laptop that's just for yourself, not on a shared drive or a shared folder. What day are you working on certain tasks, what time you're doing, what skills you're developing, what systems you're using, key stakeholders that you're interacting with. Because for many top corporate jobs, what you have to do is also have a performance review that includes the feedback from other important people you've worked with. So, for example, when I worked at Morgan Stanley, Goldman Sachs, HSBC, things like that, they have something called a 360 performance review, where you have to list the top 5 people you've worked with, and your manager gives you direct feedback in your performance review, but they also get written feedback from others that typically might not be fair. Imagine if you have to get feedback from your immediate coworker who sees you as competition. They're not going to say too many positive things about you, right? Just a bare minimum. So you have to look out for those type of things by make sure you present yourself in the best way possible. The other thing to consider is, remember, people forget fast, so keep proof of your achievements. And that's, like I say, keep emails, or you got positive feedback. You can log it in your end of year performance review. Make sure you keep track of everything you're doing, because people will try to take credit for the work you're doing. Track anything that goes wrong, because, people, don't remember that the rule I'm going to share here, which is CYA, which is cover your ass, right? Which is CYA, which I'll put in the chat right now. Oh. Which is a very important rule in corporate that I learned, during my internship when I started my career on the investment banking side, on the sales and trading team, actually. What it is that, you always need to make sure if something goes wrong, you don't get blamed for it. So if something goes wrong on a project, make sure your name's not linked to it as much as possible, or you did everything you could, and you've got a clear audit trail or fact pattern that says, oh, well, I did everything that was asked of me. So this is how you can actually, defend yourself in those situations. An interesting example there, if you are aware of wrestling, pro wrestling, like TNA, WWE, Ethan, I forget his name now. Ethan, what's his name? EC3? Pro wrestler. That's what this image is of. I don't know if you guys know this, but he dealt with a lot of office politics behind the scenes that kind of held him back in his career. And what he did when he left the major companies, WWE, pro wrestling companies, he's launched his own kind of wrestling brand, and he worked as an independent contractor, right? As a freelancer working on the independent wrestling circuit. And he launched a brand called Control Your Narrative, where he's basically free to take control over his career, not dealing with, leaks about the office politics behind the scenes in pro wrestling that were portraying him quite negatively and unfairly. So this is an interesting example. I think a good example of being a freelancer or a content creator or a consultant, any type of self-employment role, is pro wrestlers who work independently. There's many different examples out there. Austin Aries, Rob Van Dam. I'm sure some of you guys know these names, where essentially they have to be focused on marketing themselves on social media, presenting themselves quite well in their industry as a professional worker in a very competitive industry where there's lots of egos. So you have to, you can learn a lot from a lot of these people, in my opinion. Now, the second thing I want to tell you about, when you want to protect your career from crazy co-workers, is never yet let a year go to waste. So many people I speak to in corporate jobs, years go by, whether at Goldman Sachs or other companies, and it's just a blur. They're just like, yeah, I've just been working my job. Yeah, I got paid decent, got paid a decent bonus, but there's not planning over the long term. And then a year goes by, they haven't kept track of the progress they've made, and they just get shafted with like low quality projects and very little career progress, whereby someone who's tracking everything they're doing, they're playing office politics to progress and get promoted quite quickly. Use your job. Don't get complacent, comfortable. Don't develop a false sense of security or stability. Each year should be a leap year, and a leap year, which means you're leaping towards more skills, more promotions, and a better role. If you're just stagnating and doing the same thing you did last year, you'll be stuck there forever, and they'll label you a low performer and put you up for a layoff, right? You shouldn't have blur years, and a blur year is where a year goes by in a blur. Like I say, many people have this. You're going nowhere. You're not going forward, and the whole point is, in life, in your career, you should have momentum, right? If you're just going at a very slow pace, you're not falling behind. And many people are falling forward and then pushing forward, even if they're not good quality workers, because they're picking up on all the office politics and the high quality projects that they're getting involved in, and not just kind of blurring, getting blurred, going through the year in a complete blur and falling behind compared to others. And also always make yourself valuable, right, to the wider market, not just your current role. And what I mean by that is developing new skills, right? The same way you see an iPhone getting released every year or so, adapt and mold yourself to career demand, right? To the demand in the industry. There's no point having old skills that are no longer relevant. Try to get your name on the new projects, not just for your current company, but also you want to be on the top projects and top skills that are relevant for you to moving forward in your career, and what's in demand in the industry broadly, right? So for example, during a certain time in my career, there was a demand to know certain financial regulation like Dodd-Frank, MiFID II, things like that. And that's what people needed to be able to jump between companies, right? So if all you know is, oh, last year's projects, last few years type of skills, you're not going to be able to move forward. And what I got here is a brief screenshot from a music video by Big Sean called Halfway Off the Balcony. And it's quite an interesting concept where he's on the phone call to his older self, and his older self is giving advice to him now. So the whole point is, be aware, there's a whole concept of being a friend to your future self and making good life decisions now, whether it's with your health, your finances, investing, going to the gym regularly, eating healthy. So you're a friend to your future self, and you're pushing yourself in the right direction, right? And this is the thing. No one's going to guide you. No one's going to make sure that you don't, waste your time. Companies don't have no problem you being an average performer if they're using you to perform, to benefit the senior management, right? So you should make sure you have a leap year every year. And what I mean by that is developing and pushing forward with your skills, not blurring and falling behind. Because that's easy to do. Companies don't care about you, and unfortunately in the world, who cares about your future? Only you, right? You could, like I say, get bad advice from family, friends, co-workers, bad advice online, companies trying to sell you supplements that might not be good for you, a company's trying to sell you a tech boot camp that might not be a good option for your career path. You really need to think for yourself. Unfortunately, we live in a situation where it's such a transactional society. People are using them to meet their own needs, right? People in dysfunctional relationships where a woman might be using you for your money or your time, your attention, or your social status, and it's not benefiting you. So you're kind of in this world, unfortunately, where you're out for yourself and everyone's out to use you. Now, journal for performance reviews. Before I go through journals for performance reviews, let me talk about Arvin's comment. I think letting years blur by is a lack of self-reflection and other life events. I find it sad when older men are jaded by corporate life and they eventually accept it. Yeah, I think about that a lot, like how the system beats people down or beats men down. And this is why I think about, having I'm not saying people can't have relationships or families and kids and things like that, but you should have a kind of low commitment life, low commitment to the job you're in, low commitment to certain people who are just trying to use you because you happen to be at the same college or university or job, right? Like how many times are you going to go to work drinks? Should you go to work drinks or should you go to a gym session that's going to benefit you, right? Should you spend time with a family member or friend? If they're close to you, that makes sense. If they value you and they're invested in you as you're invested in them, that makes sense. But if someone's just generally negative, they're always grumbling about the news, they're always negative, they're always playing a comparison game with how much social status you have or how you live your life, and they're trying to use you time and time again. Do you want to be in a transactional relationship all the time? I think that's not good, right? So you should really, the same way you evaluate your money, your career, your time, you have to think about these things on a regular basis. But what ends up happening with the older men you're mentioning here, they get exploited time and time again. They put up with more nonsense from a woman they're in a relationship with. Their wife is ruling over them. They have a negative friend who's just always going drinking down the pub or the bar, and they end up wasting their evening there and getting out of shape and unhealthy. Then they're at work and they get beaten down by the environment and lack of progress there, and they just end up giving up. And that's why you do see middle-aged men who might be out of shape and have bad lifestyle choices, and all these coping mechanisms catch up with them. And that's why I mentioned the whole concept of the samurai in this society. You have more in common with a samurai than you do have with your baby boomer parents, right? Because you're in this very unstable environment from a safety perspective, from an economic perspective, and you just need to keep fighting every day and try to make the most of it. And if you have less commitments, you have low cost of living, it makes it easier for you. You can be very adaptable, and hyper flexibility is the rule of the day. Journal for performance reviews, right? So now what you need to journal, right? You should keep a personal journal on your personal laptop, on your work laptop. You should log new skills you're developing throughout the year. Keep a list of new systems you're using, because I remember one time many recruiters and interviewers were asking me, oh, have you used this system at your company? Have you used this particular piece of software? Because there's certain pieces of software and systems and processes, agile, Scrum method, things like that, different Kanban flow. You probably heard Notion. I'm sure you're aware of some of these. Those are more simple mainstream ones. But in the financial industry, there's certain trade surveillance tools, there's certain Bloomberg terminals, things like that. Do you know how to use this? Are you familiar with using this? So you just keep a list of this and the way you're using these systems. It makes it so much easier when it comes to speaking with recruiters and job interviews and logging what you're doing in your end of year performance review. Just keep a daily journal, right? Document the important people you've worked with, so it's easy to mention, name drop the big names, management you worked with in your end of year performance review. Record times you managed or trained other people, because if you want to move into a management role, you want to make a note of, yeah, I did train that new junior employee, I did help that junior person. That's the type of way you can really stand out from other people and you be put forward for senior management roles. Because if you don't do that, it's not going to work out for you over the long term if you want to move into management. You need to get the buy-in from senior management and more junior employees. And a good way of doing this is if you have an internship program, if you have a new joiner on your team and you're at the mid-level, you kind of opt and volunteer to help them and be their kind of mentor. That's how you can move into senior roles. Other ways of thinking about it is tracking projects you led to highlight initiative, right? So if you're involved in a project, specifically log what you did and take ownership of certain aspects of the project, even if it's simple, easy things, just so you'd be like, oh, I did exactly that. I wasn't just someone who dialed in every week. Next thing is note when you delivered under tight deadlines to show reliability. So if you're dealing with tight deadlines, make sure you make a note of that. And the other thing is saving positive feedback, whether it's emails, making notes of positive feedback you've got from management vocally. You might want to make a quick note of that so you can mention that at the end of the year in your performance review. Now, this is the key lesson here, right? If you don't control the narrative on all the important performance that you do throughout the year, you're erasing your own wins. You won't get pay rises. You won't get promotions. You'll be invisible to senior management. Let me zoom out a bit here. So you need to control the narrative. If not, who's going to control the narrative, right? And that goes back to CYN, which is EC3, who's that pro wrestler who coined that term. Control your narrative. CYN. He had a whole marketing campaign about that. He said, you need to control your narrative and control your life, because what ends up happening is if you don't, management or office politics are going to rule that. Your co-workers gossiping about your personal life are going to make that the talking point about you instead of the work you're doing, the goals you're achieving. Maybe I don't know what that could be. They might be like, oh, you're just not popular at work. And it's like, well, I've done all this work that I've documented throughout the year. You're not a team player. Well, I am a team player. I do participate in these projects. It's the work I've done. I might not go to work drinks because I have family matters to attend to on Friday evenings. That's a priority for me in terms of healthy work-life balance, which the company promotes. That's what I'm adhering to. I just don't have time for the work drinks, but I've done this work and I've clearly logged it here. I might not be part of the gossiping office gossip circle, but I've done this work as required of me. So if you don't control the narrative, someone else will. You erase your own wins. You won't get pay rises. You won't get promotions. You'll be invisible to senior management. You'll be forgotten and you'll be replaced. Now, let me give you a funny example of how BS some of the senior management is, right? I remember having a discussion with senior management about my performance because they got some negative feedback from a mid-level manager. And I said, what was the negative feedback? They said, oh, you don't get involved in this project and much. And I said, well, I've got documented emails where I have, and here's the work I've done. I've got a summary for you on a one-page summary that I produced because just summarizing what I've done generally. And then he started bringing up so many random points. Well, other people at your level, they go to lunch together every week, once a week. On a Wednesday, they go to lunch together. You don't seem to be invited to that. You don't seem to be in the in circle. And I'm like, is that a performance issue? And then he started mentioning other things about my personal life. Now, I don't mention too much about my personal life at work, but, you know, I'd be going to certain after work activities, which could be like, just like kind of networking or social activities that I do in my personal life at the time. And it'd be like, oh, it's a bit weird you go there by yourself. And it's like, yeah, I go there by myself to meet other people. I'm not necessarily going with a bunch of friends because, you know, my friends are busy. They don't have the same interest as me on that particular, after work event. It's just an interest area I have, maybe like a language learning thing. It's like, why'd you go there by yourself? Because I want to learn that language. I mean, what's that got to do with my work tasks? He was trying to say I lack social skills indirectly. And it's like, that's nothing to do with work. I do my work as required by me. And, if those other co-workers want to invite me to their little Wednesday lunch get together, I can attend. But I mean, that's nothing to do with the work. And if they're mentioning all those things instead of the work you're doing, and, one of the key words that at Senior American Investment Bank, once they said to me, this isn't the type of place where you come to work, do your work and go home. And I was like, well, what is it then? I do come to my job and do my work, and I might not be the most talkative or sociable, but I do my job, right? And he didn't know how to respond to that, because what he was trying to say, you need to mingle, you need to network more in a sense of playing office politics, sucking up to the right people. And it's like, I don't really have an interest in going to after work dinners, with the rest of you. I didn't say that, but that's what I was thinking, because you can't point out any issue with the work I've done. There's like such a big audit trail of all the work I've done, all the emails I've sent, all the analysis I've done. You can't really bring that up as an issue, right? Me going to a Spanish learning class by myself doesn't make me a weirdo, and I meet other people there, and loads of people going there are solo type of people, right? Who might be interested in traveling to a Spanish speaking country. So, I mean, what's that got to do with work, right? And if I'm not going to that lunch with others, I'm doing my work. Like, why is this such a big issue for you, Now, Arvin says this, I hope this doesn't happen at big tech companies. I was able to get away with eating my lunch alone at my previous job, right? Laughing face emoji, right? So, yeah, I think it's interesting. You have to kind of pay attention to all the small signs. Like the main thing about, I'll put this in capital letters, conformity. And, this is something I try to teach, right? I'm not saying you should always live by this rule, but unfortunately in corporate environments, right, conformity equals success. And that's why they compare the office environment to high school and Mean Girls. And I covered an article many months ago on a video where there was a LinkedIn article, and they were talking about office politics, and I had the image of Mean Girls, the Lindsay Lohan movie, which is a high school movie, because that's what it becomes about, being in the in crowd. It's like, if you could do your job, for example, arriving at 7 a.m. and leaving at 3 p.m. and still attend all the meetings, they wouldn't care about that. It'd be like, oh, did you arrive on work just before the manager did? Did you leave just after the manager did? You could leave work at 3 p.m. each day. And a lot of people who are watching my channel, you know what I mean, right? You typically do about 4 hours of intense work a day. There's studies that have been done. You can only focus intensely for about 4 hours a day before you kind of get burnt out. So you probably do 4 hours deep work a day, flow state deep work. I'm sure you're familiar with that term, maybe intense coding. And the other 4 hours you're doing emails and meetings and things that don't require intense focus. That's how it works for most humans, right? And even though me working like self-employed, coming up with video ideas, dealing with clients, I know that's just really how it works. But you can extend that. Maybe you do 6 to 8 hours intense work, 2 hours emails and light work, things like that, shallow work. So this idea that, you couldn't get your work done in much less work hours and irregular work hours compared to others is just bullshit, right? But basically they want you to be there. Oh, you could finish your work at 3 p.m., but we need you to hang around until 7 p.m., until just after the manager leaves, so you maintain your perception. So conformity is defined as success in the corporate environment, not actually the quality of work, It's about how popular you are, how much you fit in, rather than, you know, how good the quality of work you're doing, or if you're doing work on time or ahead of schedule. So moving on, reputation is the cornerstone of power. Guard it with your life. Now, this is, of course, a quote, a law from the 48 laws of power, whereby, you know, reputation is so important. That's why you have to protect the narrative, protect how you're being perceived. You know, even simple things like dressing well, speaking well, you know, and a general rule of dressing well in the office or elsewhere in life is dress slightly above what is expected of you. If everyone's dressing in smart casual, typically in tech environments like Arvind, who'll be working in big tech, just a piece of advice for you and everyone out there. I'm not saying you have to dress in expensive clothing and things like that, but dress slightly better than everyone else, right? That's an implicit signal that you value yourself highly, you have self-respect, and you're aware of how perceptions matter. So if everyone's wearing, let's just say, you know, trainers and kind of jeans in the office and a t-shirt, you wear a nice shirt, you wear chino pants, you wear maybe another type of nice trousers, you know, double pleated trousers, and a nice smart pair of sneakers, right? That don't look worn out, right? That's the small little things that are mattering in your career when it comes to reputation. And of course, mention, you know, what I mentioned earlier about how your performance is being reviewed, make sure that's perceived as quite well based on how you defend yourself. So Christopher's got a point here. 1 second. Hey, I'm at a quite big fork in the road in terms of my career. I don't think I need a full-on career coaching, but I could do with a chat for perhaps 1 hour. You'll find my situation interesting, I'm sure. Yeah, so just, there is a link, a pinned comment, and in the description of this video, if you just click that link and schedule a session with me, if you just schedule like an initial opening call with me, we can have a discussion. We can figure out what works best for you. So I'm going to move on. Reputation is a cornerstone of power. Guard it with your life, right? So what do we mean by that? You know, people power, if you're familiar, again, listen, I'm going to make a bunch of references. Sometimes you won't know this, but people power is, you know, understanding gossip that travels quite far and wide. So let it be good. That's why, you know, you should kind of keep it generic about what you do in your personal life. But literally anything you say to a coworker is going to another 5 people about your personal life, even if it's something completely mundane, right? People love to gossip. They've got nothing better to talk about. We know how much time in the office is being wasted. People are scrolling through news sites, shopping sites, you know, Amazon, researching things on Wikipedia. So many times I'd have my manager, I covered in the Girl Boss video, I had a manager who's from another country, and she was working in London, first time here. I don't want to be too specific because it might, you know, I don't want to be too specific about who she is and personal life and things like that. But she was a bit of a tourist in her first few months here. So she was always researching the royal family and where the local royal family buildings are and where the palaces are. And she was just on Wikipedia. I had another co-worker. She's always reading the tabloid news, the Daily Mail on her screen, or looking at buying jewelry. And then another guy who's looking at all types of just random research you would do. And people waste a lot of time in the office. And if there's one little bit of gossip, oh, you just went, what did you do on the weekend? Or you went on a wine tour with your girlfriend. Oh, I didn't know he had a girlfriend. He doesn't seem like the type of guy who'd have a girlfriend. So people get into all types of gossip, right? So you want to make sure, keep it neutral about what you discuss in your personal life, or if you do good work, let that news travel further than like a mistake you might make. Speak with certainty, avoid messy projects. Don't get involved in like problems, right? If you've got a good fix or there's a massive project and you can help out, do that. But if there's anything that has a negative aura around it, a negative project where it's just never going to work out, never going to get fixed, don't get involved in it. You're just going to look even worse in your performance. Try to be clear on your role and responsibilities. If you're on a project and you know those people tend not to be productive, they tend to dump work on their co-workers, which I've dealt with many times. I'm very clear with, okay, on an email, I'll be like, okay, these are our names and this is the work assigned to each of us that we all agreed on after the meeting. I don't want to be responsible for other people's work. Yeah, I don't want to. I've done that many times. I've worked on many investment banking process updates and on the trading floor, and what ends up happening is no one does anything until the last minute, and then I end up doing extra work and I think I'm going to get credit for it on an email. I'll mention I did these things and no one cares about it, so I just stopped doing it. And the next year we had to do the updates every year for certain processes. I'd just be like, oh, okay, well, I've done my part. Let me know if you have any questions for what you're doing. So the whole point is not taking on extra work unless it's going to benefit you. And then the other thing is be emotionally neutral, right? And skip the complaints, deliver results, and keep moving forward, right? Loads of co-workers are going to complain, this process doesn't work, the system doesn't work, this co-worker is useless, they don't know what they're doing. Try not to get involved in that, because any complaint you say about anything is going to go to 5 other people, right? And I've been on both sides of that, right? I'm listening to people complain, and all I'm thinking about, like, well, that process isn't going to change, that system's not going to change. They typically have a phrase for this, some management. This is just how things work here, right? You just need to get it done. Well, that's just the process here, you know, which is basically saying you can get on with the work or leave the company. I don't really care. Like, just get on with the work. So when people are complaining, I tend to just silently, you know, zone out until they're finished and get back to the work. And if you complain about one thing, like I remember complaining about one little system that was really janky, it was just like not fit for purpose. And like a co-worker will probably, I know that when I complained about it, I know they probably went and told 5 other people, even though it's one little comment. So just focus on getting the work done and moving forward, and, you know, having healthy distractions. I want to mention emotionally neutral, because we all know how frustrating it is being in the office when you just want to get your work done so you can get home to your family, friends, maybe, you know, show you want to watch online, a live stream on YouTube like this, or Kino Casino, or whatever that would be. What you need to do is essentially be emotionally neutral. And I try to focus on what that would be. Now, some people, co-workers in the office, they have a little photo of their family on their desk to keep them focused on that. It's just focused on, okay, I need to do this so I can move on to the next moment to kind of hurry up and get this done. And that will help you be emotionally neutral, like knowing the end goal. Maybe it's a holiday you've got planned. You need to be easygoing, right? Don't let other people stress you out or create drama for you or create unnecessary problems, right? Co-workers, managers, teams, departments, companies. It's not your problem to kind of take care of all their stress and drama. Like, have a solid boundary. That's why I'm so emotionally neutral, right? And this is how manipulative managers can be. They can use that against you. Oh, you don't seem too invested in the work. You don't seem too interested in the work. And it's like, no, I'm just emotionally neutral. I try to get on with it and don't take on the drama and stress and negativity. People love to trauma dump on you and dump all the negativity in their personal life and work life on you, and just kind of be emotionally neutral to it. And don't let everyone else stress you out, right? All their annoying habits, don't let it bother you. It's just a job at the end of the day. Don't let people trigger you. What really matters is your health and your wealth, right? Your money and your time at work, right? Always think, okay, is this going to make me more money or not? Is this going to give me more free time or not? Is this going to work out into my end goals or not? If it doesn't, then don't just be like, oh, I'm not sure about that. There's so many nice ways of telling a co-worker you don't give a fuck, right? Like, I don't really give a fuck about your opinion. Like, there's so many different ways you can do it. Oh, is it not working out? Oh, yeah. Maybe you can report it to tech support. Yeah, I just need to get on with this project, right? I'm working on now. Yeah, but, oh, that's nice to hear. Oh, that sounds nice. That's interesting. Yeah, okay. And you get back to work. It's so funny doing that, because they can read in between the lines. Like, you don't really care what they have to say about anything. And then other things we've got is common interests, right? Stick to safe topics, genuine topics you like, right? It could be a TV show everyone's watching. And I know if you're like me, if you're watching my channel, you're probably not a normie. You may not be watching sports ball, but there's typically at least one thing that everyone has in common that isn't politics or race, religion, and news, anything that's controversial. So it could be, you know, you keep a general interest on what's going on in the sports, the NFL, WWE, whatever it would be. And maybe it's a Netflix show everyone's watching. So try to stick to safe, genuine topics. This will help you manage your crazy co-workers, because you always got something safe to discuss. The football game from last night, things like that. Someone who does this really well, and I know some of you will know this in the comment section, Pat McAfee show. Well, one second. Pat. I don't think I got his last name right. Oh, 1 second. I know I spelled his last name wrong, but the Pat McAfee show, I don't know if you've ever watched it on ESPN or on YouTube. He does a really good job of keeping things lighthearted, even when you have a terrible news to report, like the Charlie Kirk, life-ending scenario, or some heated political issues. He doesn't really go into it in too much detail or controversial topics. He tries to keep it lighthearted. And I feel like Pat McAfee is like, as long as you don't be as over the top as him, you can check him out on YouTube, by the way, but he really has a way of being neutral, being on good terms with everyone. He's like the friendly co-worker everyone wants to know because he's kind of nice and affable. Try to mimic that in a sense. I try to do that in social situations, like don't get into heated debates about politics or finances or race, religion, things like that. Just like, yeah, let's just talk about the football or whatever that would be. That will help manage your perception at work. And just being a light-hearted person, because people carry around all this heavy stress from the news and things like that in their personal life. Just try to keep a clean energy. Respect yourself, right? Protect your self-esteem and carry yourself with sincerity. This is quite important because, you know, this is something I try to manage throughout my life, right? It's like people try to disrespect you and taking little cheap shots at work, and you don't want to let people do that, right? You want to maintain your self-esteem and check people on the spot. That's very important, right? When you're dealing with crazy co-workers, they're unhappy in their life and they'll try to make a little dig at you. Oh, you're not going anywhere tonight again. You know, why don't you come for work drinks? Don't you like have any friends, or don't you want to speak with us or something like that? Just be like, no, I'm busy. They try to little trigger you, or oh, you're late on that project again. Well, I'm late on that project because there was a time delay, you know, which I've discussed with you before. Do you want me to explain it again, or can I get on with the work so there's not more of a time delay? So you've got to set these kind of boundaries because people love throwing you under the bus, and that's what it comes down to, respecting yourself. Keep it surface level, right? That's the point here. You know, these aren't your social circle. They're not your friends. Co-workers aren't your friends. Your manager doesn't really care about you or your life. You know, I always think about this when you're at work. None of these people are going to carry your coffin. They're not going to carry your casket. When your life ends, none of these people are going to carry you to bury you, you know, or, you know, have you cremated. They don't care about you. So, you know, just keep it surface level. They're not your social circle. They're not your friends. Remember, at the end of the day, everyone is self-interested. They're not looking out for your best interests. And when it comes to promotions, you know, it depends on perceptions, recommendations, you know, references. That's why popularity matters so much. It doesn't matter about your raw output. And I've got loads of videos coming up on this topic about, you know, managing perception at work coming up soon. Other thing is, like I said, popularity, your performance reviews, your promotions depend on popularity. And the other thing is maintaining a positive relationship with others, right? It leads to profitable careers. So that's the last point on the screen right here. Positive relationships equals profitable careers. Now, what ends up happening with a lot of people is they don't realize that those positive relationships are all the positive feedbacks going to your manager. So make sure you're not just on good terms with your coworkers and your manager, but the managers at your manager's level, right? Because that's when they have all these management meetings. What do you think they're discussing apart from the work? It's like, who to promote, who do we have a good perception of, who do we see as being future management at our level? And that's how they discuss and pick and choose whether it's going to be you or someone else. Now, the next thing is only do extra work only if it benefits you, right? So how does that work? In the short term, you want to get senior management support and visibility on certain projects. You want to build connections and allies with others and other teams members who can help you. You want to move up to better teams, growing teams, and avoid being in a declining team. So in the short term, you're doing extra work to like pivot your career, to switch to another team that's actually growing and your team's in decline and not making money. And then over the long term, you want to build a reputation. Okay, sorry. On the long term, you want to build reputation of a reliable employee, right? You want to be the second in command below direct management. So you could be in the good books of management. So you can be the next in charge. So when your manager's busy, your manager's off the desk, your manager is on vacation, you're the second in command on the team, or even the third in command. That's how you can set yourself up for promotion. Now, skill development is, again, what you need to think about long term. Where's the direction of your industry? Where do you want to go in? And you're only doing extra work. You're only doing professional qualifications if it benefits you. Don't be another dumbass who's doing a MBA. You're going to do an MBA because an MBA is really going to help your career. There's so many people who leave comments on my channel. They've done an MBA. They spent 2 years out their industry. They've lost the salary they could have earned. That was the opportunity cost. They've lost, you know, 200K because they were on 100K salary. They spent 2 years out doing this MBA. They go back to their job. They're working the same job. They lost 2 years worth of their salary. The MBA has taken them nowhere. So be careful before you do all of that. Now, point number 6, I just want to read this comment. What did Arvin say? Arvin said, look, I pretty much only wear polos at my job at this point. I don't think it mattered as much at my previous job, but probably help at a larger company. Ultimately, your work matters. Yeah, your work definitely matters. And just pay attention to all the small, subtle cues at your new job, right? So what are people really doing, right? And I'm sure you can pick up on this. I think we spoke in a sales call before. So what are the little subtle cues? Do management dress slightly better than others? Do they spend a little more time in the office than others? What's actually going on, right? What's separating the average from the high performance? And sometimes it is the work, like you say, work does matter. But a lot of the times it is, or a lot of the other things, like I say, perception. So going back to this, right, you want to do the bare minimum only if it benefits you. And now what does the bare minimum look like, right? So the bare minimum is important to do if you're just starting a job. Why would I say do the bare minimum when you start a job? The thing is, you don't want to set the bar too high when you start a job. Sorry, I've been talking for a long time. I need a quick break, right? Just to go through this. So, one second. Okay. So only do the bare minimum if you're just starting a job, right? If you're quiet quitting because you want to quit the job and get a layoff, or you want to do job hopping. You've lost interest in the job, you're detached from the job, you're going to be switching to another job. You just don't give a F and you don't care if you lose the job, right? Now, that's when you should do the bare minimum. When you start a job, you obviously might have a probation period, but you should meet the requirements of the job description. If you set the bar too high, they're going to expect you to work at that level throughout your career, right? And it's going to really create burnout. I've dealt with that before, right? So what you want to do, you want to start a job, figure out the level of input everyone else is doing, be a decent employee, start slow, slowly increase your productive output over the first year. That's kind of important to do. So you don't want to do the bare minimum when it benefits you. Don't go above and beyond. Only go above and beyond on top projects and things like that. What you really need to do is play the game smart. Figure out what everyone else is doing, how much small talk they're doing, how much real work they're doing, how much time wasting scrolling they're doing. Do the same level of output as them. So people, like I say, I've been on trading floors, so people are making millions of dollars. People are wasting time on high six-figure salaries, scrolling through the news and things like that. And I don't even mean economic news. I just mean general gossip, right? Gossip sites, right? Celebrity gossip, looking at jewelry to buy and things like that. And what they do, and I'm thinking they pretend like they're so busy, they're doing so much work, so much of the time, and half the day they're wasting scrolling through the media. So why are you going to be working so hard? You should figure out, if everyone's wasting time, I'm going to stretch out my project like they do. How long do they take on that project? Oh, I'm going to take the same amount of time. Oh, they need 2 weeks to do it. I need 2 weeks to do it. And when they say 2 weeks, it's really, 1 week is just time wasted scrolling through the internet. So I'll do the same thing. So that's what I mean by learn the pace of the company, the pace everyone else is working at. And do the same level of output, the same pace of other employees, be just above average, be a B+ player. Only go above and beyond for certain important projects or you'll burn out quickly. Work at 60% of your output on a daily basis and only work at 100% when it comes to your top important projects. Give them a few glimmers of potential, right? Do not work as an A+ employee all the time, just enough for them to keep you. Impress them every now and again so they see you as someone they should promote or someone who's good enough to keep and not put up for a layoff. You're not at the lower end of the team. Do not work as an A+ employee all the time. Just work just enough for them to keep you, believe in you, and promote you over time. Pick your battles and big moments, right? Then pull back to average output of 60% of your work output, right? Work at a high level, like I say, for top projects. Otherwise, just be above average, right? Now, what is the risk here? The risk of doing the bare minimum can make you a target, seen as easy for a layoff, for them to say you're a low performer. They can say you're not enthusiastic, you're not eager to participate, you're not a team player, and then they play the game to get rid of you, shifting your work to others and saying you're not needed and giving you a layoff, right? They discreetly and slowly force you out. They might say that, and this is how they write up a low performer on their performance review. And these are words to look out for in your performance review. If you see this on your performance review, you might be in a situation where you're dealing with a layoff. Okay, I'll go through the comments now. Arvin says, it's funny because I dressed a bit better than my boss. I noticed him and other senior engineers start to wear polos a few weeks later. I definitely need to improve picking up on other social cues. Yeah, so that's interesting. That's interesting. That's an interesting comment on the screen right now, right? People pick up on all these social cues. I'll tell you a funny social cue. Christopher, I will come to your comments in a second. So Arvin, so this is interesting because I realized it's so interesting how people act in the office, right? And this is what I mean. It's all the subtle signs. People are paying attention to what shoes someone else's have, and I mean men paying attention to the shoes other people have, and oh, where'd you get that shirt? Oh, what brand is that trouser? Things like that, right? So it's not just like woman being attention seeking or paying attention to this. And this is a thing. And I realized certain things where it shows you how little people care to flip that. I would buy, and I think I mentioned this in a recent video where I'd buy an expensive cake for my coworkers for my birthday, 2 cakes because we were on 2 separate floors. And it wasn't the most expensive cake, but it was a local bakery that was like a French bakery that had high quality cakes. They were quite well known. And when my managers had their birthday, they would buy like cheap sweets and cheap kind of products, like, little like Reese's Pieces, things like that, the equivalent of that in the UK. And I'm like, these people are on like making 5 times my salary and they didn't even make effort. And then I remember one of my coworkers who would suck up to everyone. He was my immediate manager and he would always play the game, sucking up to everyone like I've never seen before. The most slimy, greasy, liberal type of bugman, soy boy type of guy. Like this typical male feminist, modern man, effeminate type of man. And, every now and again he'd break character and I'd be like, oh, it's your birthday. Are you going to get anything for the team? And he wouldn't get anything for the team. He'd just be like, no, I don't really care to do that. No, it's my birthday. I'm just going to leave early or leave on time. He just couldn't be bothered. He just laughed it off like, no, I'm not going to buy anything for anyone. And this is what's hiding behind, that the type of psychopath behavior that you have, the sociopathic behavior, whatever you want to call it, right? This type of manipulative guy who's a male feminist who supports BLM when it's time to support BLM, who has the right political views and, whatever it is, oh, he's super interested in his co-worker's personal life. But behind that, it's just like complete fake behavior. He'd go to concerts with co-workers, things like that. You want to know one of the most underhanded things I've seen, right? He would play this fake nice character. This is the funniest thing I've seen. And he was friends with a coworker, and she was saying, oh, you know what? She's thinking about traveling to Montenegro, which is, a nice country, quite wealthy people live there, wealthy investors when they want to escape the West and things like that. And they discussed booking a holiday there and traveling with a few co-workers. So she booked her flights and the trip, but he pulled out. So it was basically going to be both of them. And then, so she paid for everything covering her trip. And she ended up going on a solo trip because he pulled out the last minute. She didn't realize he was BSing her the whole way, that they're going to go on a nice co-worker trip there. And then she had a go at him like, well, I just booked everything for myself. I can't back out now. And then he started taking revenge on her by giving her loads of work tasks to do in a short time frame. And she went and complained to the manager. This is the type of ridiculous stuff you have to deal with, right? In the work environment. That's why you can't get close to coworkers. You have to be aware of perception, like I mentioned, and how people perceiving you. Just completely deranged people. I mean, how are you meant to respond to that? Christopher Harrison says, Ethan, do you feel like you essentially burn bridges with your corporate world at this point because of your content? I feel like you're 100% committed to going your own way. Much respect. Yeah, I think I don't use the phrase burn your bridges. Maybe burnt the ships, burnt the boats, I'm on death ground, right? That's the reality, right? If we have a real conversation and break the fourth wall, where am I in my life right now? I'm on death ground, right? Which means that, I'm too far deep in the battle to go back. I'm not 100% secure where I'm at right now, but I'm going all the way and I'll die on my sword. And I was thinking about this when I was walking. I think I was walking through a grocery store this morning. I was thinking, I am on death ground right now, right? I'm burnt the boats. I'm on the shores of Normandy, right? On all the, references you probably see military references where it's like, I'm going all in, right? So this is going to work. If it doesn't work, I'll be on the news someday, maybe, you might see my name and you might be like, I didn't realize that's what happened to him. But I'm going all the way in, right? I'm going to make this work. I'm going to focus on content creation. I'm going to focus on being a career coach. I've got other ideas I can work with as an extension of this, but I'm going all the way in. And this is really more attuned. You can tell from the way I'm speaking right now. This is more attuned to my personality than what I kind of did before. I went through that. I survived it, went through promotion levels, dealt with a lot of the stuff. But this is more aligned with what I am, right? And who I genuinely am. And even if that comes at some cost financially and socially, I mean, I feel like I was destined to do this, or this is more attuned to what I'm doing, who I was meant to be, you know. In the same way, if you're working in tech right now, like Arvind or others, sometimes it's like, this is the path I'm meant to be on, regardless of what that costs me. Now, I mentioned in my other videos, Gregory Mannarino, who's a trader who could have become a mainstream guy. He could have become Jim Cramer. He could have become a talking head on CNBC or Bloomberg and things like that. But he had to take the path he had to take. Sometimes you're on that path, and he managed to kind of take the path in terms of becoming the more alt tech, the alternative version of the media in terms of finance content. There's other guys, some people might know Max Kaiser, who was a successful stockbroker who went into covering financial journalism. Then he went into crypto. Now he works with the president of El Salvador, Bukele. I'm not sure how to pronounce his name. His main advisor is Max Kaiser, who's a former stockbroker who went into financial journalism, exposing all the financial scandals and burnt his bridge with the finance industry. And now he works there and is living a good life with his wife, who's a former journalist who's also worked in tech and finance and things like that. So you never know where life will take you. And we've seen this economy transform so quickly, right? And I'm not saying everyone can become a content creator or an influencer or work in AI or become the crypto advisor to the president of El Salvador. It's like, you have to strike out in a sense and work on your own purpose. And that's so important. And I know there's risk. I feel the risk and the pressure on my fucking head every day, bro. Trust me. I know what I'm saying. I know it puts me at risk, my life at risk in a sense, my financial future at risk. And that's why, you know, you're here with me, 18 people watching. I'm going all out. Let's see. You know, I'll die on my sword if it doesn't work out. It makes me laugh thinking about your previous colleagues watching your videos after stealthily playing the game for so long. Yeah, that's what is going to be funny. And I don't really keep in contact with those previous colleagues. I mean, if they might reach out to me, let's see what they say. But I mean, yeah, I don't mention their names, but they can read in between the lines. They probably know the stories for themselves, right? They probably read in between the lines. Oh, well, that story was about me. They probably think that, you know, it'll be funny, you know, it'd be funny. I mean, maybe I'll talk with them in the future. I don't know. Arvin says, the image of planning $1,000 trip or thousands of dollars for a trip with a coworker who bails on you last minute is hilarious. You should make a diary playlist that's telling these stories. Yeah, I've started making some videos that are talking head videos. You probably see my working with 4 girl bosses video. I'm going to make another video about that manager guy. Let me make a note about that story, actually, because that's absolutely hilarious. Can you not imagine you book a trip? It probably wasn't thousands of dollars because London and Montenegro isn't that far. It's like going to Eastern Europe. I'm not sure. My geography isn't great. But so it probably cost about $300 for, I would say she probably spent just under $1,000 on this trip, like a long weekend trip. She booked it because she thought this co-worker was going to go with her, and they were friends. It wasn't like they were dating or anything. Definitely friends. They had separate relationships and things. It wasn't like a weird thing. They were definitely friends, right? But she, you know, he pulled out the last minute, and it's so funny. Yeah. But I mean, there's so many funny stories. I have so many funny stories about our female co-worker because she got married to this guy. And it's clear she married him because he had a high status job. But she fancied another co-worker. She was really flirting with another co-worker all the time who didn't like her. And it was so obvious. And I made a joke about that. And she pulled me into a room and asked me to apologize to her because it's so obvious that she didn't like her husband. But I made a small comment. I said, you seem really excited to go on dinner with this co-worker, you know. Yeah. Listen, there's so many funny stories I have. A Mixed Feeling says, I really appreciate your content. Thank you for that. Yeah, there's a lot on the line right now for my life. You know, I hope this works out. Let's go. You see what I have on screen right now. If this appears on your performance review, this is basically saying they're trying to say that your performance isn't good and they want to push you out over the long term, particularly if this appears on multiple performance reviews, like back to back, like your mid-year and your end of year, or your end of year back to back. If it says on your performance review, you lack initiative, right? That means that, you know, you're not taking the initiative to do extra work. You just do what is asked. You rarely do more. You don't pick up on any of the work tasks that are assigned to the general team. You need to be more engaged. You're not like paying attention to meetings and speaking up enough. You're not proactive, as in doing extra work. You're doing limited collaboration with others, which means you're not good at teamwork. Or you're not helping others enough. You have potential, but needs to take more ownership. this means that you're kind of a bit below standards, right? Because they always expect you to go a bit beyond. You need to exceed expectations, greatly exceed expectations, which is some of the performance review things they put on FANG careers, big tech careers. You'll probably see that as one of the performance review standards. So yeah, just look out for these phrases. The last two are not visible in cross-functional efforts, which basically means you're not working enough with other teams and departments. You're not raising the profile of the team. So that's why it's important to be kind of emotionally neutral and somewhat sociable, which means that be aware of where your team sits in with others. Do you have the organization chart of your department and what other departments you work with? And I'm not saying you have to be everyone's friend and be the most popular person, but be like, okay, well, I'm working in the risk management team on the sales and trading floor. We sit next to the tech team. Could I maybe talk with them a bit more and see how their team interacts with us? Do we have any joint projects I can get involved with through building a rapport with them? We have this operationals issue. How often does the risk management team deal with the operations team, right? Who are the top 3 contacts there I can build a rapport with? Maybe someone senior, someone mid-level, someone more junior. And how can I maybe represent my team to that team? Another thing, delivers results but lacks leadership qualities. That's basically saying that you're not part of their succession planning, which means someone who could work over the long term in that industry and get promoted to more senior levels. Because all you can do is do your job at your level, but you don't have leadership qualities to help others. These are HR safe criticisms that say you're not enthusiastic or loyal enough to the job. Oh, let me move to the next thing. Yes, this is the last little comment here. So avoid setting yourself up for failure, right? So we all do this in our careers sometimes, where you try to do too much. Don't take on too many new tasks you don't have skills to do. Don't do a lot of big tasks you don't have time to do, right? I know you want to do a little bit extra, impress others, be doing well on your performance reviews, but be careful. You know, there's a phrase that is also in the 48 laws of power, which is avoid stepping into a great man's shoes, right? Which we can take to interpret many things, which means, you know, don't try to live up to too big hype, right? Don't set up such a big hype around you. You know, all these skills, you can do all these things. It's best to be kind of, like I say, a B+ player. Be modest and be doing a bit above and beyond. Don't go all the way above and beyond. Don't be like, I'm going to do on that project, because I know all these people, I want to be popular. Say I'm going to do this and do that, and then you fall short. It's rather, you know the other phrase, kind of over deliver. What you want to do is set a low bar and over deliver for that, right? So kind of under promise and over deliver, which is a popular phrase I'm sure many of you know. Under promise and over deliver. So a simple way of doing this is telling your manager, he'll say, oh, I need you to get this work done. And you can say, oh, how much time do I need? How much time can I have to do that? He's like, oh, I need it by the end of the week. And then you can deliver it by a Wednesday or Thursday, just to kind of impress them. Oh yeah, I managed to get around to it. So it's kind of under promising and over delivering. Let your manager know about time restraint. So I always let the manager know early that, if something's going to be delayed, because there's so many times things are getting delayed. With Arvin, I will come to your comment. I'll just go through this first. So how do you deal with, wow, we are running a bit long. Okay, so let me go through this. So let your manager know about time restraints. So many times you're working on maybe a solo project and there's time restraints, time delays that are coming up that have nothing to do with you. You ask a coworker or an assistant for some data and they delayed you by 2 or 3 weeks, and it delays your review or report by over a month, because then, you have to deal with other delays too, or you have to deal with extra work that comes with that you weren't expecting, that they give you information last minute. So let your manager know about time restraints. Communicate your workload conflicts effectively, and instead of just rejecting things, let them know early, like, okay, well, I received this data a bit late. So rather than telling them last minute, oh, I can't meet the deadline, let them know there's been some delays and I'm trying to work with it, but we might need an extra time to complete this project. Prove yourself, then request a pay rise politely. Yeah, always prove yourself first. Don't be asked, like, oh, well, how does the promotion process work? Make sure you're meeting some of the promotion requirements. You've got a proof of maybe 3 projects you completed before you're asking for a pay rise. Don't be like, oh, the inflation's high and I was looking for a pay rise and things like that. You should always prove yourself first. Don't take on new tasks for an empty promise of a pay rise, right? Sometimes a coworker leaves and they're like, oh, we can't hire a new coworker, so you have to do their work. You might do that for a few weeks, but say, listen, you know, I have to do all my work tasks and this extra work. We're going to have to need, will I be compensated for that? I'm happy to do that, but will I be compensated for the extra work? Because it's really putting a stress on my time. And if they're like, no, you should say, okay, well, I can do that for some time, but you know, doing this for years on end, it might not be, you know, might not be a healthy working relationship, being able to do my job and half of someone else's job if there's not a new replacement to step in. And what do they offer at that end? Do they say you can get promoted and then manage a junior to do that half of the work? Are they saying you're going to get extra pay a year down the line on the basis of doing extra work? Or if they're not offering any pay, and like I said, there's only two things that matter in your career at any day, is money and time. Now, if they're going to say, oh, you have to do your job, and we had the other employee who left and you have to do half of their job until we get someone new in who might take a year or two because we haven't got the budget for it, what you should say is, well, okay, well, we have to be more flexible with the timing of the work I'm doing, right? Because I can't expect to do my entire job on time and half of this extra work, 50% extra work. So what you say is, okay, well, can we put some of these low priority projects, and you should have a clear list, but for your own reference, what's high priority and what's low priority for your manager, for you to stay and keep your job. And you say, okay, some of this lower priority work, this less focused work that we have to do, could be perhaps delay it or delegate it to an offshore team, or could I do it at a later stage because I have to do the 50% of my job that's important and the 50% of someone else's job. And then what that leaves is the extra 50% will be the low quality work or the low priority work, which we'll have to outsource or delay to future years when we have to work on them. So be calm, confident, and self-assured. You know, keep your project under pressure, control under pressure, so others can see you as reliable and capable. So yeah, be calm. Don't let people think, oh, you can't handle pressure. Set your own standards and keep standards high. Like I say, you want to keep standards high overall, because the way you're being judged is overall. Your people skills, your soft skills, your technical skills. And that's what I mentioned earlier in the video, right? Earlier in the live stream is being careful of your perception, because many people are really good at technical skills and they get real sloppy. They stop taking care of their health. They start dressing really sloppy. They start looking scruffy at work, you know, not shaving a beard for like several days on end. And they're producing a good quality work, but they just come across as like a low quality person. That's why you have to set your own standards, the way you dress, and keep standards high. You don't have to, like I say, buy expensive clothes and expensive cars and watches, and just be like well presented, right, and well spoken, and have good people skills. And even if those people skills and that networking comes a bit at the cost of your work productivity or your work level, you know, as long as you've got a above average work output and a good rapport with people, and you dress well, speak well, that's what people value. You know, that's what they're going to remember. How did you speak in the video, in the interview? How did you speak in a meeting? I mean, how do you speak in a committee meeting with senior management? What do you do when someone popped by your desk with a question? That's what they're going to remember, rather than the technical expertise you exhibited on a work project. The other thing is, avoid, projects and instructions that are vague. Try to get things confirmed on email if people are trying to set you up. And that's why you've got to think 3 or 4 steps ahead. People are giving you a project. Is this a project that's going nowhere? Is it misleading work? Are they not going to help you? Are they going to ignore you to your face when you have questions? Are they setting you up to fail? Avoid that type of trap, right? So don't let vague instructions and lack of support sink your performance. Think a few steps ahead before some people set you up. Sometimes a manager doesn't want to deliver negative news to a coworker or understands the project, so they'll just dump it on you. And then you're like, well, I don't know how to do it, and I don't want to create an argument with the other coworker. So be careful how you manage it and how you get dragged into things. And doing nothing extra or too much extra is meaning you fail, which is what I said at the start, right? You don't want to do too much extra work and then you're burnt out. You don't want to do too little and then you're judged for that. There's lots of gray areas on your on expectations and priorities, right? Clarify the goals early to avoid blame later, right? You don't want to be essentially saying your manager, sometimes managers are terrible. They give you extremely vague instructions, like, oh, we need you to lead this project to completion. I remember working on a specific thing in the trading floor whereby we to track everyone's phone line, and they had certain hoot lines, which are like team phone lines on the trading floor, and be clear on which ones are being recorded, which ones are not, which ones should be used, which shouldn't be used, and for what purposes. And it wasn't like they made it sound like a quick job, like, oh, it'll just take a few hours, but it was like a project that would take months. It took years. It ended up taking up 2 years before they reached a conclusion with it. And they kept putting a lot of pressure on me. I'm like, this is a bigger project. We can't just act like this is a small thing to do in my free time at work. So, they didn't like it at first, but then they understood it. And, over time, we were able to complete the project with 2 team members, not just me. Last point is seek to verify, clarify, and be one step ahead. Anticipate issues before they cost you your credibility. Yeah. So anticipate issues. And like I said, that's what you got to think a few steps ahead, not just, I've been given a piece of work, I have to do it. And this is what it comes down to, right? What you want to do actually is take control of your career. And that's what I offer as a career coach, right? Stop letting managers and chaos dictate your future. You want to operate like a free agent. I'll teach you how to build leverage, not just loyalty to a company. Whoa. Can you see my screen? I think it's working fine. I just got an error message, but I think it's working fine. So I will answer your question in a second, Arvind. Now, test. Okay, everything looks fine to me. So, it's your career. You want to live by your rules. You want to have your career by your rules, not dictated by crazy co-workers, difficult managers. And my coaching will help you win from a position of power. Like I say, you don't want people taking over your career, over your life. You don't want one bad performance review or office rumor to erase your value overnight. You want to control the narrative of your career, guard your reputation like it's gold. And I'll teach you how to journal wins, protect your image, play the corporate game, and rise above office politics. So click the link in description, the pinned comment on this live stream if you're interested in moving forward with career coaching. Now, Arvind says the last thing we're going to go through. How would you deal with a lackluster performance review when when did you know to leave and cut your losses rather than use your proof of work to fight back with your boss? So that is complicated, and specific situations, of course, I discuss with my coaching clients. But generally speaking, you should think about, are people ganging up on you? Is there a narrative you can't fight? Are there too many managers at the mid-level above you who have agreed a consensus that is irreversible? Like, you're just not good at the job. They're getting too much negative feedback about you. You're not a likable person. They always have a negative vibe around you. That's when you realize, it's best to jump, right? I mean, you can use your proof of work to a certain extent, but that's why you should always be picking up on signs. How are other people perceiving you? If people are avoiding you, people just come across like they couldn't care less about you, it's probably because there's rumors going around that you're just not someone that they want to work with. Now, what I want to see right now is my poll. So let me see the poll right now. So if you look at the poll right now, do you think AI will replace your job in the next 10 years? So you look at the pinned comment right now. It says that yes, but I will adapt in my industry. So, AI will impact my job, but I'll adapt. Yes, I'll switch to a job. So yes, I'll adapt is 33%. Yes, AI could replace my job, but I'll switch to a different job, 21%. And no, AI won't affect my role, which is 24%. And then no, AI will create more opportunity, 21%. So the majority of you saying, yeah, AI will impact my job, but I'll adapt. People saying AI won't impact my job. That's the second option. That was second highest option selected. And then some people thinking they'll switch to a different job, or AI will create more opportunities. But it's quite split, if you notice that. It's only 33% that are saying they'll adapt. The rest of people are saying, well, maybe I'll switch, maybe it won't impact my job, maybe AI will create more opportunity. So it is quite a mixed bag, which is quite interesting there, right? I do have one special request for everyone here. So like I say, I'm in a very specific point in running this channel. I want to, of course, push to 10K, then 100K, and make everything move forward. All I ask of you, got 14, 15 viewers right now, let someone know IRL in real life about my channel. Share it on Reddit, 4chan, Facebook, whatever platform you use, Twitter. I love Twitter. Let people know, this is a channel that can help them. It's funny, it's interesting. We're slightly politically incorrect. We're not playing by the rules. And I actually help people. And I think, the people who are here, the last 14 people, is because you find some value in what I'm saying. So thanks for listening. I'm going to end the stream right now. And more videos, new videos coming out next week. I'm working on that right now. Thank you, and see you next time.